Thanks very much, everyone. Could you take your seats? Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. We'll just get the meeting underway. I have apology for temporary absence from Councillor Goff. I have an apology for lateness from Ref Manji. Would someone like to move that? Glenn, seconded Pauline. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. We've got a number of declarations of interest, largely around the various agencies and companies that people sit on as directors. So I will note those. And we move on to public participation, and I'd like to invite Councillor Tom Lambie and Councillor Jan Cranwell from Environment Canterbury, and I'd also like Council Ranger Arthur Adcock to come forward as well. So if you could come to the front.
When the Zone Committee was first established, we did a number of workshops over a period of 3 to 4 months. Really the purpose was to identify what was of value to ourselves as individuals, but also as community representatives. And the Otukai Kino and its tributaries were quite prominent in many people's minds at the time, so it became a priority area for the Zone Committee pretty much from the get-go.
We've just got into this particular area over the last 18 months. So about 15 months, 16 months ago, the willow and blackberry, old man's beard.
Turn all your Wi-Fi off, councillors.
We've just got into this particular area over the last 18 months. So about 15 months, 16 months ago, the willow and blackberry, old man's beard was right up to the river's edge, and in fact right into the river. We started off clearing the banks of about 3 or 4 metres back from the edge, and about 8-9 months ago we put a row of carrick sector along the bank, and now during this winter we will go in and we will move another few metres back of the willow and the blackberry, etc., and clear it out, and then we'll go and plant some taller trees in behind that. Here we've got a waterways which is clean, and we're trying to keep it that way and trying to look after what we've got.
It has the ability to actually be restored back to pre-colonial days prior to the drainage. It would be an attraction where families would come back year after year and we're proud of, and reconnect with the landscape, so to speak, and having a real tangible connection to their community and the greater Christchurch.
Pupu ake hi te whenua he, re te waie, hei o raka mo te tākata e, Anō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tata katoa. Nei te mihi atu ki a koutou, ki ngā kai kaunere tēnei ata. He ata tū whakahirehira, nā te mea I hoki mai koutou tēnei tohu, nā tātou I toa mo te awa o te Otu Kai Kino. Thank you for giving us this time this morning for myself and Councillor Lambie and also Arthur Attic here today to show you the award that Environment Canterbury and also Christchurch City Council achieved at the National River Awards for the Otu Kai Kino. This year the award was for dissolved phosphorus and at the Otu Kai Kino it has dropped by, can't remember the number.
17.5. Yeah,
17.5%. So 17.5 the number. So that was the nationally winning river. So it's quite an auspicious occasion. And you saw from the video the work that Arthur has done on the Otu Kai Kino. 10 kilometres has been fenced. He's worked a lot with the landowners there. If you know riparian planting, a lot of landowners only like giving 1, 2, sometimes 5 metres, which, you know, in a sense that at least keeps the stock out of the waterway. But in this waterway, sometimes up to 20 to 100 metres of riparian area has been fenced and planted over the last 16 years. It's also been a community effort. You have worked, not only the two councils, but the Department of Conservation, you have Fish and Game, Forest and Bird, but also the Corrections Department as well. A lot of time has been spent on weekends and during the week with community service plantings, and a lot of people have brought into the area. But one of the biggest opportunities that has come out of this is just collaboration. And that was one of the big points regarding the New Zealand River Awards, was how through collaboration what you can do in the community. There's scout groups, there's school groups that come here, and the opportunities to actually, for people so close to the city, to actually see what a spring-fed waterway looks like. But as you already know, that used to be the south branch of the Waimakariri, and so of course, once the south branch got moved to the north branch and it dried up, of course the springs came out. So it's spring-fed area, and that is beautiful water coming through. So if we can look after that water as it flows past behind the Belfast, those houses, and it heads back towards the Waimakariri kind of area, that'll be amazing. So this is what this award is for. We brought it here today to show the Christchurch City Councillors. Pauline wanted to steal it off us on last Tuesday night, but I said the best thing for us is to promote this river and promote the award and the work that Arthur and the community has done, is bring it into your council meeting, and then from this, Arthur will go around to all the organisations who have helped. Take it around and show the work that you have done, achieved, look at what we've won, and then hopefully that'll promote more funding for the area, and also promote other rivers that might be able to receive the same treatment. So therefore, on behalf of Environment Canterbury and also Councillor Kotso, who came up to Wellington as well, and of course Arthur and the great work that he's done in the community, we bring this to Christchurch City Council so you can show this award around to your community. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tata katoa. Any questions? Arthur will answer them all.
Well, I wanted to begin by acknowledging Arthur and saying thank you on behalf of the council and on behalf of the City of Christchurch for the work that you've done. Your leadership in this area has been absolutely outstanding, and we're incredibly proud of you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Phil, then Yanni.
I'd also like to thank Arthur and the Rangers, and Andy can too. Recently I did a bike ride just further through towards Belfast from the Groins, and I was really impressed with the work that councils have done in terms of reinvigorating the area and all the native plantings. It's just a wonderful change to see, and that is Arthur too.
That's the area we're talking about.
So the Otakare, that's okay.
That is, it follows the Otakare.
I wasn't quite sure which stream I was on, but it was beautiful.
It's the one. Yanni.
Yeah, thank you very much, and excellent work. I just wondered if Lamb and Hayward was still involved, and just whether we should acknowledge their contribution as well.
Yeah, so just on that, Lamb and Hayward, that's the old reserve by the motorway there.
Right.
And the name the Otukaikino River became because that's where it used to kind of run out. But the Otukaikino Lamb and Hayward Reserve, that's a separate project, and then of course that's where the water burials used to be, and that's why they, Mai Tuahuriri haven't agreed. So it was really the river, the name of the river, because remember it used to be the Waimakariri. Yeah. So when it became a spring-fed river, the name Otukaikino got placed on that stream.
Well.
Yes.
Excellent. Well done, and a huge thank you to all the people, the periodic PD workers and corrections and all the volunteers and to the staff. Yeah, fantastic. And
one thing we're looking at, and Arthur really wants to happen, is a field trip next February through the Christchurch West Mountain Zone Committee and through Councillor Cotter and Lambie. Really want to get the councillors, so we're looking in February that we can get on a few four-wheel drives and actually go out and have a look on the back door of our area at actually the work that has been done.
Great. Aaron and then David.
I think there should be some special acknowledgement here as well for the Isaacs family and their contribution to nature in the city, and the Otukaikino, the spring is in their wetland where they have the most endangered wading bird in the world in a breeding program, which is in our city. This is fantastic, and that's where the river starts and it flows down through. They've put a lot into this as well in partnership with Arthur, and I think the beautiful bridge that you see there, when I saw that biking through, I hopped off my bike, I didn't fall off, but it was incredible, and I couldn't work out why there was such a stunning bridge in the middle of nowhere. It's because they donated it, and it's amazing, that bridge. So
can I just...
Yeah, Arthur.
I mean, so with the Isaacs and the bridge, we've actually got the Waimak Regional Park ECAMS, and then you've got the Otukaikino track, which is Christchurch City Council, and Isaacs have come on board, and they're actually putting a track to link the two up. So that bridge we was put in first. They've actually put a couple of culverts in. The bridge, I think, was tens of thousands of dollars worth of work. The culverts have been, I think, 20, 30,000 each sort of thing, and then they're putting a track all the way through quite a few k's to get to join the two made tracks up. So you'll be able to go from the groins through the Isaacs and then back along either through to Spencer Park, Bottle Lake, or down to Rana Park. The other one, so Isaacs have put big dollars into this development, and also they give us staff to help once a fortnight. We get one of their staff members to spend a day with us. And the other one is Clearwater Golf Resort there. They have also spent, lots of tens of thousands, it's big dollars in clearing up the Otukaikino and helping with the planting. Plus, in both cases, they've given us the support and let us fence big areas of their land up to put to our work as well.
Yeah, I went to visit Isaacs recently, and I was extraordinarily impressed with both the conservation program that you've talked about, but also the commitment to the environment that I saw. It's amazing. So, David.
Yes, I too would like to offer my congratulations for the award, and I think back to my very first job out of university. I worked for the North Canterbury Catchment Board in water quality testing, and I think back into those days when, if you went south downstream of the Dickies Road Bridge, all Capitone wool scour and the freezing works discharged into the river there, and the oxygen levels went from an acceptable to zero in a very short space, and the river turned black for quite some distance. So in the short space of 40 or 50 years, to turn the river around into New Zealand's premier award is absolutely fantastic. And when I think back to what I saw in that river all those years ago, this is a remarkable award. Thank you.
Very good. All right. Well, look, thank you very much. It's much appreciated. Thank you.
So, do we bring this up to you, Leanne? Give it to Pauline?
To you.
If you want to do that for a photo, but I'm just wanting to suggest that perhaps Arthur be able to borrow it for a short, is that what you want to do?
I would, yes, I'd like to borrow it and get the Isaacs and the Clearwater and the Corrections and all the other groups that are involved, Trees for Canterbury and Kiwi2 Trust and some of the different scout groups come and actually get photos and get on their webpage, because they're the ones who actually won it. Council supported it and provided some of the money, but it's the actual people out there getting their hands dirty. I'd like to go round and, you know, get photos with them.
Yep.
Yeah, so have a photo opportunity.
Right. Yeah?
No, we don't. We're all right.
Arthur.
You right?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just really looking forward to seeing all the councillors tomorrow for the UCAN Christchurch City Council cordial tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock. So I'll see you all in.
We'll do a photo.
I'll take this on your phone. Is this an iPhone? I don't know how to use this. I got one anyway. You're in it, Vicky.
The three-way handshake awkward. Right, okay. No deputations by appointment, no presentation of petitions, resolution to include supplementary report, moved by Jamie, seconded by Sarah. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. The series of minutes, moved by Andrew, seconded by Sarah. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. And the next series of reports are from Finance and Performance. So over to you, Raf.
Yep, so the first one, item 8, is Regenerate Christchurch. It's their annual report. So a lot of these reports are backward looking. We did have a good conversation with the Chief Executive of Regenerate Christchurch about the forward work programme and opportunities for saving money. And it seems like they're heading in that direction. So that they've completed a great deal of their work so far. So hopefully we'll start to see that, that budget requirement decline over the next year or two.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to move that.
You're happy to move that? Seconded by Andrew. Any discussion? Yanni?
Well, just to say, I think the key thing there is that this report will be back in time for this year's or next year's draft annual plan. So we'll get the information in time to make those decisions around that funding. I think that's really, really important that happens. So support that.
Right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Council controlled organisations annual report for the year. So
we've got 8 annual reports here, which we discussed at the Finance Committee meeting. Nothing of huge note. I mean, VBase is still struggling in terms of the operational model. Trans Waste is seeing lower dividends, primarily from lower waste volumes going through the Burwood Park. Otherwise, nothing major came out of that. So I'm happy to move those.
We've got all the variety of councillors that are conflicted due to their involvement in each of these organisations, but you'd like to move them on block, seconded by Dion. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. Christchurch NZ Holdings, Raf?
Yeah, again, this is the first annual report of the newly constituted entity. So instead of an AGM this year, they've asked that we pass the resolutions here at Council in lieu of that. Quite happy to do that. Again, nothing major here. There's the continued write-down of Powerhouse Ventures, which is now pretty much been completed. And they're in good shape now to go forward as a new entity. The only things in the resolutions are the board appointments So ratifying our councillor board appointees till 3 months after the election as normal, and the previous appointments that have been made, just ratifying those. So I'm happy to move that.
Happy to move that. Seconded by someone who can. Dion. Question, Yanni?
Oh, it's just clarification. I know at the committee there was just some concern that 4 in terms of the appointment was a bit confused. So I think we just asked if that could be tidied up, to be really clear.
Sorry?
Just under 4, totally get the...
there are 3 resolutions.
355. Oh, sorry, the board resolutions.
Yeah, so it's like I said, so the appointment of the councillor members.
Yeah, I understand what it is. Yeah. It's just really confusing from the wording on there as to whether or not that's extending them within 3 months of the local body election, or whether that's when the term expires. And we did talk about that at the committee, just been clarified, been made explicit.
Yes, so that should say within 3 months of the local body elections in 2019. So council appointees, they have 3 months to basically either be
replaced or renewed.
Yeah, I think it's the same as CCHL.
Yeah, it is exactly the same.
Yeah, so can we just get that amended, Colleen?
Yeah.
So do we want just a noting provision on here? So agrees that on behalf of the council, the chief executive executes the written resolution in accordance with the voting decisions made by council. Is it that one, or is it the resolution?
No, it's just the wording. So the resolution 4, it says to ratify the previous decision to extend the appointments of the council directors in accordance with provisions of the company constitution, and then it says brackets within 3 months of the local body elections to occur in 2019.
Yeah.
What that means is that they are
appointed to then, not.
Sorry?
Oh, sorry.
So
yeah, they're appointed until 3 months.
So in terms of the resolutions coming to council, you just want that, we can clarify that in number 3.
We'll just put 4, just put 4. Note that the appointments of council directors expire 3 months after
within 3 months.
Within 3 months of the 2019 election, in which time they have to be replaced or renewed. Yeah. Note that the appointment of council directors expire within 3 months of the 2019 local body elections. Is that clear enough?
Yeah, that's good.
Yep, cool. All right, so we've got and Glenn?
Yeah, sorry, just on one, I just wondered, we fund them 11.8 million RAF. Did that receive much discussion about not holding an AGM? I would have thought that would be the regular thing to do.
I think that the reason is this is their first year as a combined entity, and I mean they're in briefing council nearly every month, so we're having huge oversight of them, so I think for this year that's fine.
Sorry if I may,
yep.
But the other point that needs to be made too is they've been very keen to actually go and talk to where people are rather than invite a few people to an AGM where a few people show up. They've actually been really keen to be out there explaining to people what they're doing as a new entity, and personally I think that's a good approach. We should encourage them to be out there talking to others and maximising the message that they're sending out to people. And I think the feeling I got from them was they felt an AGM just is a small number of people that actually know most of the stuff anyway. As the chair said, we've been briefed regularly.
Yeah, so, AGMs are pretty dry affairs at the best of times, so they're being much more proactive in coming to talk to us and all their stakeholder groups.
And external stakeholders too. All right, I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. Corporate finance report, Ralph?
Yep, nothing really to report here.
Move it.
Yep, happy to move.
Seconded by Andrew. Any discussion? Put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Financial performance report.
Yeah, so this is the financial performance report for the first quarter of the year. As you can see from the front page, we've added in a few pretty pie charts just to make it a bit more interesting and accessible. In terms of the first quarter, everything is tracking pretty much as planned to the budget, and the year-end budget is forecast to come in slightly above break-even. So everything's tracking fine. There's nothing of major note in there that's outside the normal parameters.
Very good. So you'll move it and Andrew will second it. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Next item is the short-term guest accommodation issues and options. This was a report from regulatory performance, so I'll hand over to you, Jamie.
Yes, happy to move. Obviously what's there is that slight amendment with just changing visitor accommodation for more than 120 days, than available than 120 days, and that's just simply to align that with Auckland. Easier to trace occupied than available. There's no paper trail for available, but there is for days booked, and the occupied mitigates against the effects, but available doesn't. Anyway, I'll take the paper as read. It's relatively straightforward, but this is really about getting the ball rolling to put visitor accommodation that are operating with online websites outside, in a lot of cases, from the city plan on a even playing field with the hotel sector. So something needs to be done around this, and it's probably bigger than Christchurch, I think we can all appreciate. So you also note that there is a paragraph there to work with local government to try and find a nationwide approach to this. Sorry? Central government and local government New Zealand. No, that's all right. Same. Anyway, staff are here to answer any questions.
Yeah. Raf.
Yeah, thanks for this. Did you look at proposals to actually charge through the platforms like Airbnb, where they have suggested that they will actually just charge a per day fee, if you like, rather than, because it's so complicated trying to track all these places, and that seems to be a more efficient way to approach it?
That would effectively be a bed tax, and we have spoken with Airbnb, and they are, on the face of it, willing to be as helpful as they can, but I think that goes beyond the level of assistance they were willing to provide us with. So, yeah, it's a matter of if we provide them with we can't even get a link, for example, on their front page to our requirements. So we're working on that to get that in, but their level of assistance is has limits.
Yeah, I mean, because they're the ones who've actually promoted this. I mean, they've talked about it, and I think this is not the only platform distributor that we're going to have to deal with. And a lot of these are overseas-based corporations. The government's looking at some kind of digital tax approach to this. So we could end up chasing our tail on every new thing that comes out, trying to work out how to rate for it, and it's actually impossible. So I think if you're having discussions with central government, I'd be certainly having that conversation, because they will have relationships with these organisations.
And central government requirements at a nationwide level would certainly help our management of this. And if they required all online providers to do X, Y and Z, that would make life a whole lot easier for all councils.
I mean, I think because, you know, services like this are not just disrupting traditional forms of business, they're disrupting tax collection processes as well, which is impacting local government taxation as well. So that's a real challenge, and maybe the Productivity Commission looks at it in the funding review. Yeah. You know, otherwise you're going to be going door to door. It's not going to work out, is it?
No, the current monitoring options we have available aren't ideal. That's certainly correct.
Yeah. Phil?
Just like, so that every option is fully considered, and as Raf has indicated, discussions with central government, I'm just a bit concerned that in fact we don't progress this faster in terms of the communication with central government, apart from number five, that we'd advocated the New Zealand Local Government Conference via remit, can we not also include a way to actually ensure that in fact we do have some direct communication with central government over this New Zealand-wide issue?
Well, I mean, a part of that will be the submission to the Productivity Commission's review of the financing of local government. So it will come up in that context. It's bound to. So I don't know that we need to add to this, but we've got to advocate to the relevant ministers directly is in there, in the resolution. It's not just raising it at the conference, but to advocate to the relevant ministers directly. So we will pick that up. I don't think it's necessary. We're going to make a submission. I think it closes in February, does it? Yeah, so we've got plenty of time, and yeah, Christmas reading. You're all expected to be fully au fait with yeah, that's right. Tim.
Thank you. I mean, with regards to the heading of the paper, guest accommodation issues and options, the residents from Richmond came with concerns with regards to the number of the building, etc., and the number in the area and the change to their communities. Because one of the things that we looked as a council in our district plan was getting a huge amount of people living in our central city and building those communities. We are very different to any other city in New Zealand with regards to the rebuild and the proliferation of all these types of builds, the small apartments, etc., in one hit rather than organically happening. So are we somehow looking at those communities and talking to those established communities and the effects that these are going to have and are having?
Well, I think the next step for the district plan is to continue to do some more research. At the moment we can't do a plan change, but we can start to do some of the engagement with the communities and think about what some of the options would be.
Because I mean, the thing that, you know, wherever you look at in the world, irrelevant to Christchurch, we are unique in the fact that we are suddenly rebuilding a huge number of small apartments, which are, I guess, ideal if you're looking at the Airbnb structure and process and how that will affect those communities to try and build them. So I guess, what are your thoughts on that?
I think the district plan at the moment does have a number of objectives and policies around trying to protect residential amenity. So I think it's a question in looking at the district plan rules of the extent to which they're achieving that at the moment, and whether or not there's any changes that need to be made to better protect that amenity.
So if we could really look at that, because it does seem for the residents that have come in that the district plan isn't covering their concerns. So I think that we should have a focus on that for sure. Thank you.
So, Andrew?
Clearly there are a number of issues at play here. The regulatory environment obviously is one thing that will be considered in the report that will come back if we pass these resolutions. The ability to enforce is one of the things that's called out quite clearly in the report, and clearly there are some difficulties with enforcement under the current regime, and identification of those properties which would fall under any category in any new regime obviously is another matter to be considered. Can we be assured in requesting this report to come back that those things will be given significant weight in terms of any recommendations in that report? I kind of turn my mind to the experience we've had in Freedom Camping, where, you know, we passed a perfectly good bylaw, but we then didn't have the resources to effectively enforce. Can we be absolutely clear that your considerations in preparing the report we're requesting today will take identification and enforceability into account as kind of key guiding principles?
Yeah, that will be covered in that report, because at the moment the rating of these properties as businesses is theoretically possible, but we are well aware there are practical challenges, and those challenges need to be brought, as you say, in detail to council for you to weigh up just what your options are going forward.
Right. Any other questions? Now, Jamie, you're happy to move that?
Yep, happy to move.
Seconded by Dion.
Can you just speak to it?
Yeah, I was just going to say, is there any discussion? Yeah. So Dion and then Tim, is it? Yeah.
You know, I'm glad to see this coming to council and actually some more work to look at this in depth, because it is a really complicated issue that is affecting a lot of people that I represent in the central area, because you know there is you know that tension between the development and getting, you know, allowing these things to happen, and then the amenity that people have in their residential neighbourhoods, and that tension is something that we do need to sort of, you know, look at and find ways through. So it's really good to see that this is, you know, coming back. But I mean, I do wonder, you know, we have existing rules, and there are 696 properties right now that are breaking those rules, and it's a shame that we can't enforce that. And that's the one thing that I really want to sort of get back really quickly, is actually how can we enforce that a little bit easier and actually slap something on these people and say, look, you're breaking the rules that are actually existing, that are in our district plan right now. You can't do what you're doing. So, I mean, I think that's something that I'd like to see back really quickly.
Tim?
Thank you, Laura. It's really good to have this paper, and thank you for all the work that you're doing on it. But do keep in mind that this paper is purely about how we are going to look at regulating, or how we're going to look at charging, etc., and the rates. Is it going to balance, or how we can balance between part-time and full-time Airbnb, how it's going to affect and get in line with regards to the hotel and motel sector as well. But what it doesn't cover, and what we need to really look at, is how it is affecting the communities which we are trying to build for the future, which it is not doing, and we, through our district plan, just from the comments, is absolutely not doing. But also those communities that are established and are healthy communities, have been through a lot and now are being affected, and very much affected by all these so-called new builds, which perhaps don't have enough car parking, etc. Because we had a vision of electric cars, everyone busing, etc. But chicken and an egg, there is a huge separation between our chicken and our egg. So I think there has to be a lot of work on this. Thank you.
Pauline, Glenn, Andrew, David.
You're just looking at this. I will reluctantly support it. I prefer really just to go down the track of 5 and working with the Productivity Commission on this, because I'm worried about the workload for this. I mean, currently we do reactively enforce the regulations that we have at the moment, but I guess this is preparing for the way forward. I don't want to get into an Airbnb bashing either, because I mean, we talk about communities, but Airbnb offers a certain slice of that. You know, you get a transient nature that great people come to our city and we want to welcome them, and Airbnb within the CBD is a wonderful thing, and you have all different tiers of the accommodation sector, and Airbnb is just one of those. And it's a bit like when you have a whole lot of cafes or hospitality venues in one area, it seems to attract even more custom to them all. So I think the more accommodation options that we have, the better. But I will today support this to come through, because I don't want to relitigate what was decided in the committee.
Glenn, and then Andrew and David.
Thank you. I support this today. It seems to have quite a procedural element to it, given that it's going to be taking a deep dive with the Finance Committee. I asked for a briefing on this at the Housing Subcommittee, which we had, and to date there is no discernible impact on the rental market, but we obviously need to keep close watch on it. I think it's really important we do undertake this work for a whole lot of reasons, as per the report, and which have been articulated today, but also including the fact that there might be some kind of, some Trojan horse developments going on out there, which actually are going to become Airbnb, which we don't necessarily know about. So, yes, important we do this and support, especially number 5, to get a nationwide approach to this.
Andrew.
Thank you. As I alluded to in my question, whilst this may look as though it's about regulation, it's actually about having regulations that work. It's about having the ability to identify the various categories of properties that we may create in any regulation, and it's about having regulations which are capable of being enforced without the need for huge resources to do that, or an overly cumbersome process to achieve the outcomes that we're wanting to see as we put those regulations in place. So I'm pleased to hear that all that will be well considered. Clearly, there's a big difference between an Airbnb type property where somebody is living in a property and they've got a spare room that they're using to rent out and get an additional short-term income from, and a property which is purchased purely for the purpose of being short-term accommodation, and that's the only reason for the property being held, owned, and the purpose of the property is to create that, that short-term rent. So I'm sure those will be things that will be picked up in the report as well. At the same time, I think we need to realise that the accommodation sector now has a lot more facets than it used to in the past. There are the traditional hotels, and there always will be a space for traditional hotels, I'm sure, but Airbnb is very much the way of the future. I think the challenge that we've got is coming up with a set of regulations that make it very clear that there are different types of properties that need to be handled in different ways to enable certainty for people that choose to operate in this environment, and at the same time to make sure that we find the right balance between the traditional accommodation sector and Airbnb and associated platforms, which certainly in my view are the way of the future and are definitely here to stay. So I'm pleased to support these recommendations today, and I particularly welcome the report coming back, and I'll be keeping a very interested eye on how this progresses.
David?
Thank you. Yes, I support the thrust of the report as well, and where this paper is taking us to. I also think, you know, it sort of ties in well with some the action plan for the city that's coming out in the new year, where we are identifying aspects of our district plan that need to have some revision. It certainly does sort of concern me when we are looking to reinvigorate our central city and encourage people to be living in the central city, yet we see some of these buildings that are being developed at the moment, and they are advertising them for sale, as some of them as Airbnb, potential Airbnb units. So I'm very keen on going forward to look at our district plan and see how we can make some changes that clearly reflect the intention of the redevelopment of the city, and avoid some of these buildings that are being marketed especially for as well for Airbnb. So yeah, support the paper that we've got going forward, but also very keen to look at the district plan when we can get our hands on it again, and do some work in this area.
Very good. Sarah? Yeah, you're going to wrap up the debate, Jamie, so I'll close it with you. Yeah, Sarah?
Just really briefly, let's not overcomplicate this. It's about enforcing our current rules and being able to have the tools to be able to do that, and it's about applying fair rates to those operating a business, and that's the crux of the matter there. And let's not overcook and overstate some of the impacts here. It's really clear from the surveys we've had that for those who even recognise that there's Airbnbs or similar operating in their neighbourhoods, very few have issues with them, and a higher rate of issues is actually for high rental properties in the area rather than for the Airbnb style. And so people have more issues with higher rental properties in the area than they do with Airbnbs. So let's not overcomplicate it, let's not overcook it, let's just get a bit of work done, enforce the rules, get people to pay fair rates, and be done with it.
Jamie? Jamie, wrap it up.
Glad to see that the pragmatic change, I think, has been made, that it's around the effect, not the intent, which was just the alignment of the days occupied as opposed to available. But with that, I'm happy for staff to further explore this. I'm not dead keen for us to lead the charge on reinventing the wheel, because ultimately I think we all agree that this is bigger than Christchurch, it's bigger than a region. It's going to take a nationwide approach to deal with it. And as Sarah said, and I completely agree, let's not overcomplicate it. This is quite simply also about enforcing the rules that we have. But finally, I will stress that our intent is to not start rating a property owner who occasionally rents out a room or their batch here and there on Book a Batch or Airbnb, but it's to place commercial accommodation providers on a similar keel to those that buy a property for the sole purpose of running a hotel room or a motel room year round. Anyway, I think this is a good place to start, and it's going to be a big piece of work, but thanks to staff for all the work that you've done on this as well.
Excellent. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. Next item on the agenda. Thank you to the staff. What is the next item
16.
on the agenda? Oh yes, list of council certified urban design experts. Oh, it's actually creating a list. Jamie.
I don't think it needs too much introduction. It just notes information.
It's a process.
It is a process that started, I think, in 2016, so it's just noting for information. Happy to move.
Okay, happy to move. Happy to second. Dion seconded. Jamie moved. Dion seconded. Is there any questions, discussion? Put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. Next one, coordination of developing the southern sections of the proposed Picton to Christchurch cycle route. So this is infrastructure, transport and environment.
This came through our committee and we were fully supportive of this. It's really just signing up a memorandum of understanding with the 5 other district councils involved. That's Marlborough, Kaikoura, Huranui, Waimakiriri and ourselves, and this is to bring the Heartland Ride down from Picton through all those district councils across the Waimakiriri Bridge, utilising the new cycleway that's part of the upgrade there,
clip on,
and across to our side, and then it will head off to the east and go through Brooklands and follow the coast down, meandering away down through to New Brighton approximately. So this is really designed to be a tourist amenity. There's no time frames for us to complete that work as far as I'm aware of. It's just a memorandum of understanding so that we're all on board. It's, our section will be part of a network of the greater project, and I just think it's a fantastic project, and we're all on board with it. Yeah.
Excellent. And so you'd like to move it, Mike? Would you like to second it? You're actually probably the only person around the council table that's likely to cycle it north and south. North and south. Hey?
The whole thing.
Glenn would take a lot longer. I knew I'd start a controversy if I said that. So, is there?
Bill wants to know if it's accessible for mobility students.
I'll give you a race any time, Aaron.
Lime scooters don't go that
fast. The beauty of a potential trail like this, can I add, is that in fact it can be done by all in sections. It's got great potential. It's the equivalent, I think, of the walking track, the Aotearoa Trail, which we have right through New Zealand. So I think it's wonderful.
Yeah. Excellent. I've been told to remind you to use your microphone so that people can hear all this hilarity, but I've decided that actually it's a good idea that you don't use your microphones during those occasions. Anyway, all right. Well, I shall. Is there any discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much. So great news. And the next item is the NZTA National Land Transport Program Targeted Enhanced Funding Assistance Rate, otherwise known as the FAR, or the TFAR.
This came through in committee as well, and the thing is that enhanced funding, what a brilliant term. And currently the NZTA funds up to 50% of eligible transport infrastructure projects that the council delivers. At the end of August, they've decided to up that funding to up to 75%. So this really is an incredibly good news story, particularly for Christchurch, in my view. So this is about the staff are seeking to bring through advance $1 million of funding so they can actually take advantage of this to begin the planning to prioritise and and determine which of our projects are eligible and that we can get completed, because there is a small catch that we have to have 80% of the projects completed by 2021, 80% of each project, up to 80%, in order to qualify for this enhanced funding. So this is really good news for us, and I think that the financial impact is very minimum, because bringing forward $1 million, it's CapEx, and if you take off the 75% subsidy, that leaves the remainder of $245,000, which we would need to borrow, which is less than the budgeted for $500,000 in the LTP. So it's quite a big win for us, so we were fully supportive of this. There's tables in there as well, but they're actually looking at projects, outlining projects that are potentially eligible, or some of them that are actually ready to go that could be advanced even quicker. So as I said, the committee was supportive of this and quite excited about it too.
So you're happy to move that, and Mike seconded. Right, could I just hand over to Richard, because I think you were, you were going to give a quick...
Or me.
Or you, right, yes.
Firstly, can I just introduce beside me Emily Taylor? She's part of our funding team. She works closely with NZTA, so she's helped us figure out the logistics of doing this. I agree with Councillor Cotter. It is a really good news story for the council. Government has signalled through its GPS clear prioritisation of safety projects, PT projects, walking and cycling improvements, improving network resilience and regional improvements. So there's a number of categories, if you like, that we can look at projects that will potentially get additional funding and stretch our local share a lot further. So there are a couple of conditions on this targeted enhanced FAR. One, as Councillor Cotter indicated, that we have to have it the work substantially complete by 2021. And the other one is that any additional local share that is freed up is reinvested back into the transport program. That in itself could attract additional subsidy, so the money just goes further and further, which is really good news for everybody, because we can get more done. The report itself, we've asked for permission to start spending on some projects that are further out in the LTP. Those are the ones that didn't have any money to get started, and we saw them as key targets to start working on. That's not to say there's not other projects that actually already have money that we're starting to work on that will get our target, that we believe will be eligible for targeted enhanced FAR as well. So there's actually a lot of work going on at the moment, and the lists in here are indicative. If we believe it's likely that it will get a targeted enhanced FAR, we will be punting it up to NZTA and asking for it. So it may not be on the list, but we'll still be asking.
Just mention the annual plan.
Oh, and sorry, and so we've asked for permission through this to spend some additional dollars for this, but the substantive changes will be made to the program will be made through the annual plan process. So we'll be starting work on a lot of stuff, proposing to make the changes to the project delivery through the annual plan, and everyone will have a chance to talk through that and debate it.
Yeah. I think that some of the examples that were used in there had, that they probably have money included in the budget already,
yes.
And that they'll tie in with them. But
yes.
I think Addington was one that people were particularly, interested in ensuring that what happens at Addington Village is, linked into, potentially bringing forward some of the projects further upstream.
Yes.
And of course in the public transport space, Northlands and the Palms are there, but Eastgate didn't sort of seem to be in the mix. And maybe that's just a question mark as to ensuring that that's in the mix for the.
And part of getting the report through was us doing a pragmatic take on what we thought we could get substantially complete. And it may be that we missed one or two, but that doesn't mean that it wouldn't get, and we wouldn't be applying for funding if it was there and moving. Yeah, good. Yanni?
Yeah, thank you. The question is, how do we get that Eastgate integrated hub moving? We've actually got a council resolution asking staff to include that in the transport program as part of the 18-19 annual plan, noting that PT projects are likely to be eligible for NZTA's targeted enhancement financial assistance rate. So I'm just trying to understand, like, what more do we need to do? We've had several resolutions passed through council. We've got an opportunity to get additional funding from NZTA, and yet we still don't seem to have any plan to get this on budget. So
there's also a resolution for us to meet with a gentleman that made deputation, and that is now booked in and going ahead next week. Following that, we'll be starting to move.
So what would be the harm in identifying this PT hub as something that could be eligible for this assistance and actually bringing forward money to start doing the work on it?
We can take it away from here and focus on it, that's fine.
So is that like an amendment, or?
No, don't need to do that.
Look, I can take it as information and make sure it goes in. I can't explain today why it's not in there. It may be one of the ones I missed in writing the report, and I apologise for that.
Could I suggest that we put that as a note, that these two areas be included, noting that staff will be also looking at the Addington Village and the Eastgate PT Hub as part of the prioritisation?
It may not mean, I mean, because what I was saying about Addington is that it may not actually need to be prioritised, because the work may already be in the program. So, but it's just making sure that it's not forgotten that that's an important part of the whole corridor.
It's actually the process of when and what's being done first, because the logjam is, which everyone knows, is the Barrington, Whiteley Ave, Lincoln Road, and so if you're putting more, making it easier for traffic to get there, you are just making the situation worse. It's really simple.
So note that the impact on Addington Village and the need to address the Eastgate public transport hub will be appropriately considered in this context.
So from this, we are actually, the RPTP needs to land, and from that we will be focusing on PT as a whole across the city and the development of that program. So it won't just be, so both of these projects are part of that. Lincoln Road is continuing, and it is a project that is well underway right now. But the list in here was an indicative list.
No, I know.
There might be other PT projects as well.
I understand that, but I just think for the sake of those that have, you know, continually raised the issue, we'll just have a noting provision that the impact on Addington Village and the need to address the Eastgate public transport hub will be considered in this context. Yeah, cool. Glenn.
Thank you. Yeah, totally get it's indicative. Just wondered whether where the Avon or Takaro City to Sea route was on the radar, and I know that's part of another piece of work, obviously, given the regen plan to be signed off in a couple of months.
So like every project in here, we were looking at the ability to deliver in the 3-year period, and we don't have those decisions quite yet. If those decisions are made and we're moving, we can shift and shuffle. It's not. This is not a set definitive list that is going to NZTA. This is something we can put up as a variation to the RLTP at any stage in the process. It's not unusual to have variations. Correctly.
Correct. Yep. Yeah.
I mean, I think that Glenn's raised a very important point, because, of course, with the Otakaro Avon River corridor work being completed by Regenerate Christchurch, the green spine is a given now, and the more of that route, because I mean, I'd actually personally be in favour of shifting some of that route onto the river corridor and onto the green spine, because the more of it that's on the green spine, the more of it will be funded through this mechanism.
Yep. And I think there's a lot more work to understand what that means and how we get through to that to be done.
That might be,
The money's all still on budget.
Yep.
And it can all just, we can just
come back to you. It can be pushed and pulled.
It can be pushed and pulled, and we can come back to you with a proposal at any point.
Yeah. Phil, then Jimmy.
Thanks, Lynette. And like it's clear this is an indicative list, but it's quite helpful to sort of, I guess, have some raised. I just want to ask you about the additional projects that could be advanced and the coastal pathway, because my understanding is that the detailed design and the whole project, that for particularly the part from the Life Saving Club to Shag Rock, that hadn't yet been signed off. And I'm aware that the coastal pathway is a whole lot of different sections. So I'm just wondering if you might be able to clarify some of that.
So the thing with the coastal pathway is, historically it's not been eligible for funding from NZTA. It now is potentially eligible for funding in a footpath basis, but also it could potentially be eligible for enhanced FAR as far as network resilience, safety, cycling, walking. So there's a number of buckets that we're looking at. That's why it's on there as a potential, but it is continuing to move forward.
Yep. So no, my question too then is that my understanding is that the work on that section has begun, and I just would like to know how that was signed off. That's all.
I'll have to come back to you on that, Phil.
That's fine if you come back to me. Thank you.
David, did you want to?
The council signed off 3 years ago the whole of the route and the design of it. What Phil's talking about is the part that's been started to be constructed opposite Peacock's Gallop. And so we went for resource consent to do it because we had to push out the seawall or something, and so that was a resource consent under the Environment Canterbury, and so we've got that resource consent, and so that piece of work proceeding. We haven't actually done the next part of the detailed design, but the design and the concept was signed off when it came to council, help me here, 3 years ago, probably 4 years ago maybe, when I first arrived to council, and it went from end to end. So but we can certainly, if councillors would like to see the detail of that, we can certainly, those construction plans are available. Not sure who's got the contract.
But you could circulate that to councillors.
Circulate the detail of the design if people would like to see of that section.
Okay, thank you. Jimmy.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to know, regarding you particularly mentioned advance, the 1 million, those budget already in the long-term plan, 2018 to 28. But regarding the annual plan, whether have any of the rates impact? No any rates impact. The same financial.
We get more for less. No, we get more for the same.
Yep.
More for the same.
No change.
Yep. No.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Aaron.
Yeah, just two questions. One is the McLean's Island Road project, the improvements there of 2 million. What's that work? Do you know off the top of your head?
It is advanced work. It is work that was further out in the program, and it is about safety, accident hotspots, dealing with accident hotspots around the curvy part of McLean's Island Road, Pound Road, Ryan's Road intersection, where we've got some real issues. Yeah, so it's a safety project.
Right, so it's mainly roading realignment?
It's mainly roading work, yeah, to try and address the safety concerns, accident hotspots.
Okay, and that one, and the other one is, will community boards be allowed to feed into this list as part of the annual plan?
Community boards, my understanding, can feed into the annual plan, yes. This is part of the, that's why we proposed to put it as part of the annual plan.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep, Mike?
Thanks. It's good that lots of people are obviously focusing on these bigger projects, but I think one of the underlying issues across Christchurch is our rate of resilience of our roads, which is currently around 2%. 2.5%, and we need to get that above 6% to actually stay above the game. So I assume that will be taken into consideration when we're looking to prioritise projects, that we're not just going to be advancing all these projects that are already in the long-term plan, but actually increase our percentage of roads being resealed to actually get it into a more manageable position.
We can do that. Sorry.
We've also got the potential funding from the Capital Regeneration Acceleration Facility, which we're going through a business case process at the moment. So there is, council has indicated that a percentage of that 300 odd million could be allocated towards transport, of which 25 to 30 odd million is earmarked for resurfacing, resealing at those 5 hotspots around Christchurch. So we expect that to make quite a big difference.
So at some stage, then we're obviously going to have to sit down and work out exactly how we want to prioritise things, including the resealing of roads, and looking at both the TFAR and other FARs that suddenly come on board, like footpaths, and the acceleration fund, and actually get a really good program for our transport for the next 3 years. And
Bill. Great. All right. So I've had that moved and I've had it seconded. Is there any discussion? Yeah.
I'd just like to reiterate how grateful I think we are as a council to see this increased level of funding. It's giving us huge opportunities, and that coupled with the capital acceleration fund is going to mean that we can actually deliver a lot more value for money, but also up our delivery program. It's going to be challenging to get this done in 3 years, but we do have a very capable delivery team, and sort of what we're doing with the cycleways, it's incredible that we're speeding those up daily. So this is going to give us an extra boost, and I think that it's a real good news story.
Very good. I'll put that motion then. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Next item is the Hearings Panel report to the Council on the proposed replacement alcohol restrictions in public places 2018. Councillor David East, Chairperson. I'll hand over to you, David.
Thank you. The bylaw considers alcohol bans in 15 areas in the city. 2 of those areas were existing as temporary. So there's no change to the actual number or the areas under consideration. Linwood was a temporary alcohol ban, as was parts of the Riccarton racecourse area. They were temporary, so they're now being incorporated as permanent bans. There is an introduction for a clause in the bylaw to consider temporary alcohol bans for large events, particularly on Hagley Park and Rafiti and Thompson Parks, and the introduction of some minor changes to the Riccarton Island alcohol ban area, which just reflects recognition more of the school, and Jelly Park, the roading on both sides of the park. The Addington area was the subject of quite some debate in the panel, the hearings panel, where people actually asked us to consider a permanent alcohol ban 24/7, 52 weeks of the year for the Addington area. It wasn't an item that was consulted upon, so we didn't have the jurisdiction to actually consider that further. It may be an item that comes up in the future for further consideration. The other part of the hearings panel, we heard some submissions from a number of sporting groups, particularly rugby league, who wanted to explore options for alcohol-free restrictions on a number of sporting grounds around the city, and again, that's an item that staff are investigating further to be considered at a later date. So in summary then, we have 15 alcohol areas. There's no increase in the number of alcohol areas, just some minor changes to a couple of them, and the introduction of the clause for large events. So I'm happy to move the report as it's presented to you today.
Are you happy to second? Yep. Is there any you'd like to speak to it? Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I totally support the Linwood Village alcohol ban going permanent. There's been quite a marked change in the behaviour in Linwood Village since the temporary one what was established, and this was a community-led initiative to get that happening into the Linwood Village. There's a lot of other social issues that we need to address in the immediate area, but this has had a quite an impact on some of the antisocial behaviour there. So there's still a lot of work to do, but this has made a difference, and I hope it's goes forward to being permanent.
Yanni?
Wondered if the hearing panel had considered, in particular regards to the Linwood Village one, which I support, and Councillor Swiggs has raised, that there was a lot of community support for it, although there has been a group and some individuals that have concerns. Did you consider producing some guidelines around enforcement? Because previously, I think what we've heard is people were concerned about how it would be enforced, and I just wondered whether the panel had any discussion around just putting in place some guidelines so that those concerns could be addressed.
Not specifically, but it is always a concern of mine with all our bylaws and the enforcement area that there is a huge amount of work that our enforcement staff are required to engage with bylaws, with resource consents, and really it's fair to say I think they're probably a little under-resourced, and we struggle to probably give the most effective treatment to a lot of our enforcement issues, but no, we didn't really sort of go into that detail.
I don't know if we're able to make a resolution, so just...
The bylaw enables the police to enforce, and this is what's happened in Linwood Village. It's actually enabled them to actually take action, not the council.
I totally understand that. As someone that's been involved in alcohol bans for a long time, I've seen what other cities have done, like Nelson, for example, worked with the youth council to come up with some really, simple, clear, easy to understand information in conjunction with the youth council to ensure that people felt that, their rights weren't being abused, but it was perfectly reasonable for people to enforce it. But there are ways of doing it, which means that people are aware of it, because one of the criticisms we had previously at this council table was that maybe some people in Linwood Village that actually weren't aware of the fact that it was a ban, and that they were possibly being faced with having enforcement action taken. So I just think in terms of a moral responsibility, actually making sure people understand that there's an alcohol ban and having guidelines around with the police how it's enforced. My understanding from the police previously is that they do take, a very not a soft approach, but they actually try and encourage people to understand. They take a very reasonable approach. I've been out with them at
night. They're very, very good.
So just having that kind of documented, I can't see what the harm would be.
Sure, our staff do engage with a number of agencies that are working in the area as well. So there is that sort of educative approach to what's happening. That in terms of enforcement staff actually out there doing, that sort of work.
Through the chair, can I make a comment?
Yes, I'd like to invite the Chief Executive to respond to that.
Thank you. I think it's a really important point that enforcement is one of the roles, but it's actually about being much more proactive and engaging communities and people around these issues. And so the actual enforcement is at one end, but there's a whole range of other things that I know that enforcement staff would like to do in terms of focusing on supporting communities in different ways. And so I take Councillor East's comments. There have been more and more bylaws or things that we need to enforce, and that we really do need to think about, so how do we do that in the best way, and how do we resource those functions as well?
So, Phil.
Just want to make a comment in relation to this, if I may. Like David had referred to the Addington Village part that they hadn't been consulted on. And I just wanted to really underline that the community board's view was that they hadn't seen sufficient evidence to actually support it. And I think that in future it's important that all of the information comes to the community boards so they have the facts too, because this is quite a serious step to take for an alcohol ban, and the boards didn't want to make that lightly in terms of their support for it.
But it wasn't. It was deemed to be out of order too.
Correct, but it's important we
which would make it out of order here as well. Just so. All right, Anne.
Yes, I'd just like to support what Phil said there about informing...
You didn't hear what I said.
Sorry. Informing community boards, particularly as they make these decisions.
It has to go through due process.
Yes.
And that's why this committee actually did go through due process, which is that they said that they couldn't make the decision.
Yes, understand that.
Yes, which
going forward, I think that it would be, they will actually, it will come back to them, won't it?
It'll go back to the community board,
and that's where I think the evidence must be given, the education must happen so that they can make a decision. Because for me it seems, as we've endorsed just recently our Christchurch Alcohol Action Plan, this is one way that communities can make a stand against the huge harm that alcohol's doing in the community, and it's a wee bit bewildering to have a community board that is actually making opposition, standing in opposition against this. So it would be great to see that's going to happen. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, so we have a resolution moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much. And we move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the hearings panel report on the public places. Sorry, who chaired this one? I've got it in front of me.
Mike.
Sorry? Mike, over to you.
Thanks. I'll take the report as read. Just make a couple of quick notes. Consultation, I think, received 15 submissions, most of them supportive, a few with concerns. Based on the submissions and the hearings process, a few minor amendments were made. The hearings panel have also recommend that Council investigate a regulatory mechanism in regards to antisocial behaviour within the CBD and reporting back to the Regulatory Performance Committee.
Yeah, good. So you're happy to move that? Do I have a seconder? Dion? Any discussion? Dion?
I feel like I'm taking over.
No?
No, so this is great to see. I just had a couple of points that I've written down here, and one in relation to great to have the code of conduct for the central city. I think that's actually, again, that's actually a good example of taking away rules and actually allowing people to do things. So this is a good news story. It'll allow people to get around and do whatever, but having a code of conduct may address that screaming piper in Cathedral Square, which will be lovely for a lot of people, I imagine. And, you know, I just want to encourage people to actually go out and make the city hum. You know, we want people in the city. You can just go and, you know, as long as you do the code of conduct thing, just go and have a good time. But I really wanted to raise the begging issue, which I noticed was in some of the submissions, and I just wanted to make a few points in relation to a couple of comments and emails I've had in the last couple of days, and one from the media around what Tauranga have done, and I hope we don't go down that track. I'm pleased to see that we are going to look at the issue a little bit more, but I just want to have a little note of caution on it. The staff that have done this bylaw in Tauranga investigated it. They can't enforce it. They can't remove the people, and the only way they can impose a fine is through a prosecution in the courts. It infringes the freedom of rights, the freedom of expression under the Bill of Rights. And this has a really major concern for me when we're looking at this, if we're going to come back and look at the begging issue. I just wanted to sort of lay these on the table. Rough sleeping, local government cannot make a bylaw to ban that. The staff in the Tauranga example a couple of days ago said this in their report. And so I hope that our staff will go and have a look at that report because it is quite good. It's going to cost $215,000 for them to fund it. That's actually quite a lot of money, and we're actually putting that money towards actually making active changes in Christchurch here. So what Tauranga have done is very uncompassionate, and I'd like to hope that our council is a compassionate council that actually gets things done. And we are addressing this issue quite seriously. So I'm glad to see that we haven't gone down the track in this bylaw of sort of putting more oppression onto people who are finding themselves in these vulnerable situations. Actually, this city, I want to be a city that I can be proud of and that we can all be proud of, that supports people that are in these situations. So yes, it's good to get the work back, but we actually do need to consider when looking at other regulatory requirements around this, that actually if we're going to do that, it actually would need to take a national approach, because there are absolutely no ways that local government in New Zealand can enforce it. So I just wanted to make that point. I know that I'm going to get hassled by it from the media because I've already got questions, but thanks for the work that everybody's done on this.
Aaron?
Yeah, I just wondered, during this process, did the trading in public places bylaw look to address the selling of sex on the street and
I think that's
sexual workers?
That's the next one that we're dealing with.
No, but trading in a public place for your sex business can't be enforced. Oh, never seen IOD down there.
Sorry, I'll just jump in there. Yes, that was looked at in the reports to the committee, and because council back in, I think it was November of last year, had decided not to take a regulatory approach, and there's a working group that's already looking into those issues, similar to what's happening with the non-regulatory approach for the street begging. So that's still ongoing work.
So the question comes down from lots of people who trade businesses in public places. Why should they pay their registration fee and abide by all the laws when others don't have to? Who are in a way, and you don't have to have a health and safety plan, you don't have to have a traffic management plan, but the others do, and people in that particular industry get murdered at a way higher rate than any other industry in the city. Why would we not be trying to help them?
Well, these matters were discussed and addressed by the council last November, and there is the ongoing work with the community working group, community liaison group that's looking at those issues.
Yeah, well, just while the vulnerable people in our city, I'll keep asking the questions if you guys don't mind.
Right, okay. Mike.
Thanks. Just a couple of points relating to Councillor Swig's comments. Obviously, there's other cities around New Zealand that have this issue and have looked at ways to fix it. Hamilton and Nelson have actually got some good schemes that are working there. And what we're trying to address here is antisocial nuisance. You know, there's a lot of people begging that actually aren't creating a problem. There's a lot of genuine homelessness that does need to be sorted. And yes, the council does have some very good non-regulatory approaches that are working and are doing a good job. But I don't think, and the panel did not think, that it's actually going to reach every single person. And there is, I think there's a group of people that are actually causing a serious nuisance to a lot of people within the 4As. And, you know, I guess the council can't turn a blind eye to that, and we need to make sure we look at tools that potentially we could use to actually sort the problem.
Yep. All right, I've got a mover and a seconder for it. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. I'll just do one more before morning tea. The hearings panel report to the council on the Christchurch City Council Cemeteries bylaw. Again, Mike Davidson, chairperson.
Thank you. So this bylaw review received 48 submissions, with 32 of them around Diamond Harbour, and not being able to pre-purchase there, and obviously the small number of grand burial plots in Diamond Harbour. The panel has made a few minor amendments to the bylaw proposal. In addition, we also like to make a slight amendment to one of the panel's recommendations due to a unintended consequence of it around 2A, which was around the disinterment and looking to use qualification, making sure they have appropriate qualifications. The wording up there actually would exclude a lot of people that don't have that qualification but actually are suitably qualified to perform the role. So I've passed some wording across to Joe for an email earlier.
I'll just move on with. Yep. So obviously the biggest thing that came out of that, there was a lot of other technical stuff that had to be changed through the submission stuff, which was sorted out. But the biggest concern that was raised from submitters was around Diamond Harbour, and obviously there was a lot of discussion. It's obviously a very sensitive issue, but citywide there's a capacity issue with cemeteries, and it's something that needs to be looked in, and we've addressed that in recommendation number 3. But the advice from staff, which we took, is obviously if we allowed the pre-purchase of burial plots in Diamond Harbour, they would actually be exhausted extremely quickly, even allowing for the pre-purchasing of plots where there may be a partner there would also create that to happen as well. So therefore the panel did not change that part of the bylaw and therefore there'll be no pre-purchasing of plots at Diamond Harbour. But as outlined in recommendation 3, as part of that citywide review of the capacity within cemeteries around Christchurch, we'll be looking at the possible redevelopment of Diamond Harbour. This is obviously going to be an issue moving forward, especially with green burial plots becoming more popular. So this will give an opportunity for staff to report back to see how this is working.
Yep. Hang on. Are you amending the actual wording from a hearings panel decision?
Yes, we've gone through the. It's an additional bit on the bottom of 2A.
Yeah.
Which we have.
It's just as a matter of course. We can't change the wording of a decision of a hearings panel. It has to go back to the hearings panel.
Yeah, we've had legal advice, and it was due to an unintended consequence of that.
Okay.
And so therefore we have relayed that to the other hearing panel members.
Is that okay? Yep.
So there was a memo that went to the whole hearings panel, who were happy that that be put to the council, that the council could adopt that wording, which is different from the hearings panel recommendation. So the hearings panel aren't changing their recommendation, but they are happy that the council can adopt a slightly different wording in the final resolution, which is suggested there, and it's been through the hearings panel.
Okay. Raf, Andrew, Glenn.
Yeah, talking about the green burial plots, was there any conversation about using red zone land for green burial plots, where the land doesn't really have any other use?
No, there was no discussion around that, but I think one of the important things is the fact that, and we've highlighted in 3, that we need to report back on the whole capacity issue with cemeteries across the city, because there's only a few years before we're going to have a big issue. And I think that's one of the biggest issues with the pre-purchasing of plots, is everyone's taking them up, and then we've got these cemeteries with lots of vacant plots in there that have been pre-purchased for decades.
Yeah. And also secondly, just because we have a specific issue in Avonhead, were there any issues around lawn cemeteries where you can't have headstones, where that might possibly be changed in the future?
From recollection, I do not recall that, but I'll pass that across to Steve. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Andrew, then Glenn.
Thank you. Capacity at Diamond Harbour has been alluded to by Mike and obviously formed part of the discussion at the hearings panel. The particular area where I'd be keen for us to show more compassion would be where the one partner has already been buried in a green burial plot at Diamond Harbour, and the ability to reserve a plot for the other partner in that situation. What would be the effect of doing that? If we were to make a rule which said that, once one partner is buried in the green burial plot at Diamond Harbour, realising there's limited space, we would allow for a second adjacent plot to be reserved or pre-purchased, what would be the effect of that? I mean, I'm very aware of some, huge passion within that community. and shortage of space in that cemetery, but I'd really like to see us get to a more compassionate approach than the one that we've achieved here. Can we just get some comment on that, please?
So the way that the green burial, people are buried in a green burial, has to be in order of burial. So it's the next rank off the cab, if you know what I mean. So once we have a burial, the next burial goes along, and it's to do with the way that they're not really marked out like a normal plot. So there's quite specific measuring, and if we did have a gap, it could there could be potential for exposure, so it has to be in order. So the 3 burials that we have had in the cemetery have been one burial after the other, so we can't have a burial and then leave a space for the partner.
So you've addressed my question in terms of the words adjacent to, but if we said in the same cemetery, what would be the effect of allowing for a plot to be pre-purchased when one partner has already been buried in that cemetery in a green burial?
So we have 12 plots, that's all we have in the green area at Diamond Harbour, and we've already had 3 burials. So if they did want another plot put aside for them for the future, half the burial plots would be gone straight away, and we'd only have 6 left.
So that would then lead to a position where we immediately needed to create more space for green burials, which may well be the right outcome anyway. Noting that Resolution 3 has been referred to, when is that reporting going to be done, and to what extent do you anticipate that that will take into account the increasing popularity of green burials?
I would suggest that that report be brought to Council at a time where...
Sit down, yeah.
Sure. I would suggest that we monitor the uptake of plots at Diamond Harbour Green Burial Area, and once the uptake of plots, so those are plots that are being purchased at the time of burial, approaching halfway point, 6 plots. That's sort of the key point where beyond that, those who have been buried already, the families of those people will not from then on have the opportunity to purchase a plot for their spouse or other loved ones within the family, because they're beyond halfway, if you like. So I suggest that we monitor the uptake of plots under the existing situation and report back to Council when we're approaching 6 plots, so maybe when we're around about 5 plots, report back on the uptake of plots there in the green burial area and in the general part, standard part of the cemetery, and on the wider capacity issues of for the city as an overall picture as well.
Given that there's already demand for plots which is greater than, you know, the reason that we're taking a policy position of no pre-purchase is because we're anticipating that there's going to be a shortage of plots. So there seems to be an illogic to we wait to report on a shortage of plots until we know there is a shortage when we're already taking a policy position that's based on a shortage of plots.
Yes.
You're already planning green burial at Yoldhurst?
Yes. I mean, there are other... At the moment, the last 2 burials we've had at the green burial area in Diamond Harbour, so that's burial 2 and 3 out of 12, have been from people outside the area of Diamond Harbour. We are planning a new green burial area at Yoldhurst Cemetery. So that, because that will be significantly a greater number of plots than at Diamond Harbour, we are proposing that it will be possible to pre-purchase there. So people from around the district will be able to purchase a plot, one plot at least, at Yoldhurst Cemetery. So that will then take some pressure off the city demand, the city-wide demand for green burial plots at Diamond Harbour.
I'm at a bit of a loss to know what to do here, because it sounds as though we're putting something in place through the approval of this document today, which, you know, if that green burial cemetery at Diamond Harbour was intended for the use of local people, and it was local people that that really drove the fact that we have those green burial plots at Diamond Harbour. It seems as though we've got an unintended outcome, that those plots have been used by people from outside of the Diamond Harbour area. We're now going to entrench that in these documents, not allow for reservation or pre-purchase of sites so that partners can be buried together in that place. And at the same time, at some point, we will be doing a piece of work to say that there's a lack of capacity, and at some point, we'll be allowing green burials to take place at Yoldhurst. But we've got an immediate problem, which is that we're showing a lack of compassion to people that want to be buried in the same cemetery at Diamond Harbour in a green burial. I just don't know how we... I mean, my natural instinct is to send this back to the hearing panel for more work so that we can resolve this issue, given it feels to me like the outcome is the wrong one. But that's probably more of a legal question rather than a question for staff who are advising on cemeteries. If we did that, what would be the opportunity for the panel to direct that the review take place more quickly, the Yoldhurst green burial plots be taken up more, made available more quickly, or that Diamond Harbour be reserved for Diamond Harbour residents only, and that we do allow for pre-purchase? Would they all be good reasons for sending this back to the hearing panel for more work? I imagine there'll be more than 12 available at Yoldhurst.
Yeah, in all due respect, to say that the hearings panel is not compassionate around this issue is a little bit disrespectful.
No, I'm saying the rules aren't compassionate.
To actually what the hearing panel did. We obviously realised it was a very sensitive issue and discussed it at great length and took advice from staff. I would say that just because you don't live in Diamond Harbour doesn't actually necessarily mean you don't have a connection to Diamond Harbour or the area, so it gets a little bit tricky when you just try and say that only certain people are allowed to actually be buried in a cemetery. You know, it was not an easy decision to make, and we made that decision with good advice, and we understand how sensitive that decision would be. So, you know, it is a little bit disappointing to get it relitigated in council today. What we are aware, obviously, is there were 12, and at that stage 2 were used, and actually potentially the best way to actually allow the cemeteries to be, the plots to be filled, would be to allow it to be done naturally, as people did die, and it's probably the fairest way for everyone that would like to have a green burial plot, and that is the path that the hearings panel followed, using good advice.
Thank you. I can see the intention of 1A, but was any consideration given to funeral directors being members of the Funeral Directors Association of New Zealand in this putting together of the bylaws? So you've got there, and that's been suggested to be modified with a NZQA accreditation, but it's actually the follow-up. So there's no account, once they've got the qualification, there's no accountability, which the FDANZ, which has a code of conduct and code of ethics, would provide. So there's some cowboy funeral directors out there. Most are pretty good, but yeah, there's
not many. There wouldn't be very many that we wouldn't allow to have have a disinterment, because with a disinterment, all of the everything's run by the sextons, and literally the funeral director, they provide the paperwork and get a health licence, but everything is pretty much run by the sextons, and the funeral directors don't really have very much input into the disinterring. They just let them do their job, and they collect the body and take it away. So we really, there's very little that can go wrong with a disinterment, because the sextons are professionals and they run the whole thing with them and the health department.
I've kind of misjudged the amount of time that this paper would take, so I'm going to have to call a halt to this and have an adjournment for morning tea. We've got our zone committees coming to make their presentation, and they were due to be here at 11:15, so I'm going to have to. I'm really sorry to staff, but I really am surprised at the extent of the questioning, and I do apologise, but we do owe it to the subject matter to go through it in a proper way. So I'll have to call you back after the zone committees have made their presentation, if that's okay with you. Thank you very much. All right, well, I'll adjourn it for morning tea, but we're having a signing of the
white ribbon
of the pledge for
yes, now
November,
yes.
25th. Sorry, my brain's not working.
Yeah.
White Ribbon Day.
White ribbon, yes.
We're all wearing white ribbons for a reason.
Right.
Excuse me, hey everyone, just for a moment, can we just hand over to Anne?
Or just for introduce, so the focus of the 2018 White Ribbon campaign is respectful relationships, and in support of this, and to acknowledge White Ribbon Day this Sunday, the 25th of November, we, the Mayor and the City Councillors of Ōtautahi, Christchurch, New Zealand, are standing together and signing the pledge to stand up, speak out and act to prevent men's violence against women. So there are 8 suggested ways that we can commit to the pledge. We can talk to other women about their experiences with men and believe them. We can ask ourselves how we've treated women and how we can behave more respectfully. We can disrupt other men's violence when they disrespect or threaten women. We can treat women as equals in everything we do. We can choose how we will be as a man and a woman and how we will act, and we will talk with young men about breaking out of the man box. We'll think about what we're watching and the media that we use, and we'll talk with young men about respectful relationships and porn. So with that, we're going to gather together at the front, and we're going to sign the pledge in acknowledgement of our solidarity, our collective voice in addressing this issue. In fact, there's a whakatauki that talks about standing together. E hare tako toa e te toa, takitahi e nare, he toa take mano. My strength is not that of the individual, but that of the collective. So together, we strongly stand against violence towards women.
Well done.
So gather up the front and we'll sign.
Thank you, everybody. If you could all please resume your seats. Thank you. Could I invite the Water Management Zone committees to come to the table to present their quarterly updates? Kia ora koutou katoa and good morning. Who wants to start first?
Kia ora tātou. Just on behalf of the Christchurch West Melton Water Zone Committee, I'd like to thank you all for inviting us here today. So I take it as read, the report. Just a couple of things I'd make comment on around the community workshop that was hosted by the Zone Committee. We had a significant number of representatives from the various community groups there and external organisations, where they shared a lot of their creative ideas around creating this resource. So they've agreed to create the mobile stormwater superhero trailer that will be wheeled out around numerous schools and community days. So they're currently looking at how what shape the design of the trailer will be and all the different methods for educating community. So yeah, people were very enthusiastic about sharing their ideas, and we're really looking forward to seeing the outcome with the stormwater superhero trailer. What was the next one? So last month we did something out of the normal for our zone committee meetings, and we hosted a kind of a field day meeting at University of Canterbury. The really surprising thing was that we had in the vicinity of 30 community members public. We average around 2 a month at Environment Canterbury's office. So with our zone facilitator, Olivia, we're looking at changing tack and possibly doing this every 2 or 3 months, where community actually, rather than just sitting down there having an information dump, are actually out there seeing changes and seeing how they're being changed in first hand. And hopefully, yeah, if this carries on like that, we'll get better education around with the community. So we also had Christchurch Airport out there as well. They gave a presentation on the amazing work that they've been doing out at the airport. And even at the airport itself, they've been promoting a lot of their stormwater interventions as well as other environmental measures. The last one I'd like to do is also congratulate those responsible for the Lime scooters. It's amazing how they've taken off and the community have really embraced them. I've noticed at our work in Show Place that as soon as one's nearby, I actually tried to get one to come here today, but I had to walk 3 k's away. They're so busy. But I have done one to Environment Canterbury from Show Place. So, yeah, sure. And if it means less cars on the road, then it's got to be a good thing. Kia ora. No questions.
Thank you. Have we got any questions? Vicky and Yanni.
I've got my usual question, which I'm going to ask every time until I get the answers, and that is the nitrates that are leaching under the Waimak. What work is being done on that?
Okay, so Waimakariri Zone Committee have just this Monday approved their draft zone information program to go out for discussions. The measures are putting on the water flowing under the Waimakariri into the Christchurch aquifers is at a much lower level than what they're insisting for their own water wells.
So what does that mean? So given that the nitrates take a really long time to get under the river, and that they've been accelerating dramatically in the last 15 years, what does their current suggested change actually mean for the aquifers into which their nitrates are flowing?
So there's a whole lot of measures they're putting in place. I think the key thing is that the modelling science from Environment Canterbury is saying that it should not reach any more than their target is to reach 3.8 mgs per litre.
Well, that kills every invertebrate, doesn't it?
No, far from it.
Are you sure?
So that would protect 90% of aquatic life.
Are you sure?
Yeah. If not, I think it was 85, sorry. It might be 85%.
Are you absolutely sure at 3.85?
Yeah. I can send you through the report on that, yeah.
So it's already at that level, right?
In most wells, yeah.
Yeah. So they're already there. So what exactly do you know? It may not be fair to ask you this question, but do you know exactly what they're doing, and will it actually stop any further nitrates, or will it get worse for the next 15 years before anything happens?
So when you say they as in who?
As in the Waimak District Council, from whose area the nitrates are coming under the Waimak and into our aquifers.
So it's actually administered by Environment Canterbury.
Yeah. We've got a meeting with Environment Canterbury tomorrow afternoon.
It's not on the agenda.
Yes.
No, it's not.
Oh, well, so did you submit it for the agenda? We can pop it on the agenda. I mean,
so can I just be
can
clear
somebody make a
I
note to put it on the agenda?
If he can. Is this for you guys, or is it for ECAN just alone? Because I don't want to hassle you about something that's not within your ambit.
So when you say you guys, you're talking about the zone committee?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so the zone committee is a joint committee of Environment Canterbury and Christchurch City Council.
You guys.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And Diane might be, from what I understand, Christchurch City Council will be making a formal submission on the draft zone implementation program.
That's right. We already agreed to do that.
Yeah, we agreed to do that.
Okay.
And I must say also that it fits in alignment with Ngāi Tuahuriri Runanga. It's very closely aligned. And given that we're one of the Ngāi Tahu farms are in that area, Ngāi Tahu farms have assured us that they will meet the standards required and actually exceed what's in the draft zone information program. Yeah.
So I forgot who the other one was. Yanni.
Yeah, thank you. We had a really excellent presentation this morning about the Otokino River, and that was really neat. I just keep hearing the Heathcote is in such bad health, and I just wondered if you could just give us some sort of understanding about what work the zone committee, if any, is doing around improving the health of the Heathcote. And I think previously we've kind of asked if there's things that you think we could be doing as a city. Then we kind of get a part A where we can make a decision to do something. So it's like two things there. One is just an understanding of what currently is happening in the Heathcote and what's being done from the zone, and then if there's anything that you think we could be doing to help improve its health.
Yeah, I'll go try and keep this short. So one of the key contributors to the Opawaho was sediment erosion from Port Hills, particularly around construction sites and more so since the fires. So the sediment erosion toolkit that was put out and agreed to by City Council and Environment Canterbury to all industry leaders will make a contributing a significant impact on what doesn't get into the waterways. The other one, probably the other main contributor, is stormwater from residentials. Unfortunately, a lot of the infrastructure around there is very old and leaking, so upgrading of that would be a major benefit. You've also got saltwater intrusion coming up, and the level changes and drops since post-earthquake. We need to take into account that as well. The other one that was a little bit contentious was the not mowing of the riverbanks, keeping the grass longer, stopping some of the sediments running off, particularly from the roadways, because a lot of the roads along there don't have the guttering in the systems. Capturing at point of source would be a major benefit to stopping pollutants going in there. So all your curb and channels, if you had chambers in there that could be emptied out, the chambers that contained all those contaminants, and then you come along and clean them out regularly. It's stopping it at point of source is critical, and it's a lot more cost effective than dredging later on. Yeah.
So have you just a follow up to that? That's great, thanks for that. Have you had any input into our cycleway that's going along the river? in terms of just looking at what's being done to improve the water quality at the same time?
We've had updates on that to some degree, yeah, along the cycleway. Some are of the view that it causes a hazard because of less parking on the side of the roads and that sort of stuff. But so you're talking about cycleways along the whole of the Heathcote?
There's definitely a section that's happening very shortly, and it would be really good to know that we're taking the opportunity to improve the water quality with some of the things that you've talked about.
It's a cycleway, yeah. So if it means less cars on the road, then yeah, it's a good thing.
Well, we curve and channel.
Can I say to Aratapata's answer too that the zone committee, the Christchurch West Melton Zone Committee instigated the whole project about the remit to local government, to government to ban the importation and use of brake pads that contain copper. And that's going to be a huge benefit to addressing these contaminants at source, and that's the best way to deal with the stormwater contaminants, and the Zone Committee is doing a lot of work around that, also empowering community groups like all the groups around the Heathcote Paoha, and also providing funding through the Biodiversity Fund. So I think the West Melton Zone Committee is doing an incredible amount of work that's going to help us with our consent to keep the contaminants out of the river. It's a huge project, but I think we're making good progress.
Yeah, I mean, when you look historically at the Heathcote and what its main purpose was, yeah, it was a dumping drain. Yeah, so it's got a legacy on a par with Te Waiwara in the way that was treated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do want to leave time for the other zone committees, so if it's necessary.
Can I just make a comment in relation to the cycleways in the river? I don't
Can we deal with that on a separate occasion?
Well,
I mean,
we can,
it's
but
not.
a lot. That is certainly being
We're
attended
hearing
to.
a report from, and I wanted to say congratulations on going out to the university and attracting sort of 1 million times more people than you would normally have by being stuck in at ECAN having your meeting. And I just think that's going out to the community. That sort of feedback actually shows that the public want to know what to do. They want to know what contribution they can make to making their rivers clean, and I just think it's a tremendous thing, and I wanted to congratulate you on that aspect of your report. I think that if there is an issue around cycleways and their impact on the cleanness of our waterways, I'm sorry, I just don't quite connect with it right this second.
Cycleways have the opportunity for users to actually see firsthand the waterways. What you can see on a bike is a lot more than what you can see driving past it in a car at 50 k's an hour.
Yeah.
So and you can see the good and you can see the not so good in the waterways.
And maybe that's about increasing people's sense of value for the cleaning up of our waterways, which is so important. Yeah. But it's an ongoing conversation that we need to be having.
Point of source definitely has got to be our first means of attack.
Yeah.
Stopping it, getting into it, and then address what's already currently in there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. So, do we want to move on to the Dr. Wakefield? Do you want to?
Next.
You're next. Okay.
We negotiated.
Paula.
Haere mai ki te pataka ora ki hautu. So you've got what you've got in front of you. There's only 3 things I would add. One is that during this time we had our annual... I should say that Dr. Wakefield is actually a member of our committee as well, so she knows what I'm talking about and she can butt in if she wants to. 3 things. One is we've had the water quality monitoring for Banks Peninsula streams and water bodies, and I think in general it's a mixed bag. In some places where we might have hoped to have seen some improvement, we're not, and this is raising questions for the scientists about why this might be so. So that is one interesting thing. The second thing that came from that report was Te Roto o Wairewa, which is in a pretty bad way, and there's a lot of factors that interact to have created this situation. One of the parameters that is measured is actually starting to show a positive trend, and I know it's only a wee glimmer of hope, and it could, we're used to having major setbacks on that lake, but we've got our fingers crossed that that's a sign that things are picking up, and that's to do largely, I think, with the lake opening. And the third thing is about the fish passage, and you've got to be really careful how you say those two words together, and which we talked about, and so I'm bringing you right up to date, we talked about at our meeting 2 days ago. This matter came up because Council has built some new stormwater structures in Cass Bay and Corsair Bay, and the Zone Committee was a bit concerned that they hadn't included fish passage in them. And so some ecologists went out this week and had a look at what was there. They fish early in the morning or at night with torches and things like that, and they found 4 banded cockapoo, which are reasonably special, upstream of the structures. And when the Zone Committee inquired of Council staff about why there wasn't fish passage incorporated into the new structures, the response was that it was because the streams are ephemeral, it wasn't considered necessary. But the finding of these fish in these very steep rocky streams on the south side of the cold side of the Port Hills suggests that actually there are populations of native fish in all those streams probably, and we need to be considering that, Council needs to be considering that in when it's thinking about infrastructure. And I suspect, Yanni, that's what you were trying to allude to in your question, that how infrastructure is designed can have a big impact on water quality and ecosystem biodiversity. And, I don't want to be critical, but possibly there's a wee way to go within the Council in this regard, and I urge you all to ask questions about fish passage when you're faced with these things. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Any questions? No. Oh, go on, Yanni.
No, it's something that we've raised previously, but just the fencing off of the streams where Council leases to private farmers. Is there any update on that?
The Kuti one has been resolved, and Council is working with the community group and the landowner to fence the stock out of the streams. But I'm not aware that there's been any work on the other places, and I'm not even sure that it's been clearly identified where those places might be, where there's Council administered Esplanade Reserve adjacent to streams. So we'll keep asking questions about that.
I'm just again trying to come up with a way to actually get some progress. There's an issue that you've identified repeatedly. It would be really good to get some visibility of what do we need to do to address that. The problem is that the council that we were advised, it's Paul Devlin's team that gets involved in this, and they just don't have the budget to do much on it. So they did what they could for the Akuti one, which was the most pressing, but I'm not sure that they have the capacity to address the issue elsewhere.
Yeah. So which is the sorry, the name of the team? Which
he's the
no, but which section of the
that's
council?
Parks Unit Regional. I mean, I don't really know, to be honest. Regional Parks, yeah.
Right. So is that something that you could have a look at, Mary? Yeah. What it was the fencing, the fencing of council-owned land by the waterways.
Particularly where there's Esplanade Reserve that is administered by council, that is being used for grazing by adjacent landowners.
They've had some of it done, but it seems to be a resourcing issue. So it would be quite good to have some sort of ability for the Zone Committee to report back to the next meeting, hopefully with some progress. Yep. Pauline?
Go back to the other one, just for clarification on the fish passage.
Yeah.
Those works around Corsair Bay, I think you said, was that part of the Summit Road?
No, it's on the Inner Harbour Road. And
no, is it part of the Summit Road project works?
I wouldn't think so. I don't know what that project is.
It's
but
not?
it's nowhere near the Summit Road.
Not Corsair Bay.
Well, yeah, it runs around.
It's much further
I
around.
think
That's
these
past
works,
Littleton.
when you drive past them, you can't help but notice them because they're massive concrete structures, particularly the Cass Bay ones. And I think they've been built in response to the floods and the Easter floods, where there were real problems with. I think that's why they've been upgrades, but I'm not sure about them.
Okay. But I mean, it's a really good point to raise.
So I'm just wondering which department is done that work?
Well, it'll be David's group, won't it?
There's a new standard on fish passages that have just come out in the last month or so, and we've got one of our staff members been working on it. So the design standards are going into the IDS so that they will be doing. We are looking, we've got a range of culverts, some of them that meet and some of them that don't meet. And I'm sorry, I don't know specifically about these two, but we are certainly into all new designs, integrating the new standard wherever we possibly can to look at those fish passages, because it is really important for little eels and all sorts of things, so that we have got that certainly firmly on our radar screen.
Could you get whoever it is to report back to the zone committee? I mean, it just seems to me
I've already had correspondence with the person that was involved with that led that project, I think. And his explanation was that they got advice, and the advice was it wasn't required. But what our response was, we weren't sure that was the case, because the streams are ephemeral. I mean, it's a fair enough assumption to make. But the thing is about banded kakapuas, they're excellent climbers, and they can survive in the pools upstream in these steep, shady catchments if they can get to and from for their breeding cycle.
Right.
But we've got a situation now where we've got landlocked population, which will eventually die out.
So I just think that the ones that have been highlighted here, it would be useful to get a further discussion on that. Because if not required means not legally required, versus not needed, and if there is then a mistake about whether it's needed or not. I mean, because it may well be that some retrofitting is required.
That's right. It's possible, but in lots of cases to do a little
much easier to
addition
do
or
it
something
right at the
that
start.
fixes it.
Yeah. Phil.
Thank you for your reports. Clearly there's a lot of great work being done through the zone committees and a whole lot of engaging and involvement with community groups. I'm just wondering, do you see that those community groups being joined up well enough, and is that like an ECAN responsibility, or how might we perhaps do that better if we need to?
I've worked with environmental groups on Banks Peninsula for many, many years. In fact, I was one for a while. And we, at the community board, we could see that there was a lot of stuff going on in our rohi that they weren't talking to each other. So we thought, let's get them all together, and we had a big workshop called Return of the Native, that's right. And they did all come together on this one occasion, and they had a good old chinwag and exchanged ideas about traps and what have you. But then they went away into their corners, and the thing is, they're quite happy working on their own, in their own little groups, doing their own project, and actually trying to make them come together to become some big coalesced organism. It's not actually doesn't actually work for these ones, but maybe other communities are different. But and it's partly because of the topography of Banks Peninsula. They're all in different valleys and different catchments. I don't know. I don't think there's a need for them to come together. But I think it's the role of the zone committee to provide a level of coordination, and that's what we do. And the thing that strikes me in Banks Peninsula at the moment is that it's really getting ahead of steam. Almost every community has got a group that's working on water now. Well, when I say I'm exaggerating, but they're popping up like mushrooms.
All right. So now we'll move on to Dr. Wakefield.
Kia ora tātou katoa. I'm here today representing Alan, who is unavailable, and he's also going to be stepping down soon as the chair for the Selwyn Te Waihora board. So there's going to be a bit of a transition. I'm not sure who's going to be reporting into the future. So I'm here today for him, and I've only been on the Selwyn Te Waihora board for a few months, so I'm really happy to talk about the two areas that I mentioned here, because it sort of strengthens some of the talk that's already happened around community involvement and engagement. So the first one I'm happy to talk about is the youth zone committee that has been running with the Selwyn, and I think they've done an excellent job. They pulled all this, I think 6 schools came together and presented their various water projects, and I don't know how you feel, but it's very hopeful when you see young people so enthusiastic and passionate about their particular river. So I really wanted to congratulate the Selwyn Te Waihora board for pursuing that and now taking it to another level where there's active engagement with the young people through this committee. The other area that I've been interested in watching the development of is the Selwyn Waikirikiri River project. And I don't know if anybody knows of that area, but it's got a huge, wide group of people who've shown a lot of interest. And so it's only in its beginning stages, if you like, of planning, getting to know, working out a clear vision and direction for the group. But again, I feel really happy about the progress that they've been making and the types of conversations they're having with each other. So it's, you know, for me personally, who's been involved in a lot of water projects over the years, it's quite exciting to see such a diverse group come together and working. So I think they're in their third or fourth meeting, so it's early stages, so that'll be an interesting project to watch in the future. That's me.
Questions? Nope. All right. Thank you very much. So would someone like to move that the reports be received? Mike, seconded Sarah. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. And could we have staff back up the front to continue our conversation about the Cemeteries bylaw and the Cemeteries handbook? A very grave matter indeed. I know. No, well, nobody thought it was funny. Yeah. It is. Right, now, I've got, Glenn, you were in the middle of questioning.
Oh, rightio.
Back to it.
Yes, I was over whether the FDANZ measure could perhaps be a better one in 1A rather than a qualification. And what I was getting at, I can see the intention of 1A, but there's no kind of recourse after that. So you qualify, but there's no follow-up. So the FDANZ, for instance, has a code of conduct. Now, I know you've said a sexton actually does the work. Totally get that. But then if they do, why do we still need someone who's a funeral director to have some kind of qualification? If we do it, my personal preference is for the FDANZ. So,
the important, I think, that last piece that's in brackets, whether equivalent qualification is held, will be at the discretion of the cemeteries team. But I sort of think that, like I said, I've never had a disinterment come through. They all come through the bigger funeral directors, so we don't have any problems. Like I said, there's only one or two that we probably would be a little bit dubious about having disinterment. I know there's no follow-up, but at the end of the day, when there is a disinterment, it's managed by the sexton and the health officer from the department of from the Canterbury District Health Board. So,
and the more prominent, if I may, funeral directors in Christchurch are on the FDANZ list, but no, it doesn't cover all of them, and so there's no filter, as you've said. You know, sometimes you do get one or two that are not up to scratch, so there's no filter there.
No, we really don't ever have some of the couple that I'm talking about do disinterments. They literally pretty much all come through the major three or four funeral directors in town, and we don't have any problems with.
No, you won't with the big ones.
No.
With the others, there are some. Yeah.
Yeah. So we just take some direction from the sextons, because, as I said, they manage the disinterment, and if they had any sort of red flags, they would probably talk to us about that. So it would be on a case-by-case basis as to whether we would allow them to carry out the disinterment.
Okay, so thank you. So if you have that case by case.
Yes. Yeah. I've got Aaron, Yanni and Vicky.
I just had a couple of well, hopefully quick questions. One was around the green burial. I know there hasn't been many, but there's a big uptake, I think, in eco burials, not green burials, and there's a difference, and are people potentially confusing the two?
There's only one type available in the city at the moment, and that is green burials at Diamond Harbour Cemetery. So green burials, as we are defining them at the moment, or which are provided at Diamond Harbour Cemetery, are no embalming with a plant or tree on top, and some other specific rules about no metallic objects, that sort of thing. So the difference is the green burials are not as far down the eco-burial spectrum as natural burials. Natural burials could be, for example, recreating a native forest, and potentially where the plots are less defined. So there are one or two subtle differences, but future plans will allow greater flexibility in the type of natural or eco burial available.
Okay, and then the other one is around future cemeteries. I thought on the council's property register we owned a massive block of land out Madison's roadway that is scheduled for cemetery. Now it's not on a map as a cemetery yet, and it hasn't gone that far, but that's enough land, I think, to bury the entire city. In graves, it's very large. Can you comment on that? It's out Madison, so Templeton. So it's and for green burials going forward would be a good spot because it would be quite high there. Would you like to comment on that particular?
Yes, the intention is to develop a cemetery on that land, which would cater for the whole city going forward for the foreseeable future. We're not at the stage yet where we have confirmed what can take place there exactly. At the stage we're still planning, and some investigations of the soil and with iwi are still necessary, but that is the intention, yes.
Yanni?
Yeah, thank you. There was some really good work done in 2013 on a cemeteries master plan, but I note this is the bylaw in the handbook. There's no sort of reference to that. Can you just help me understand which committee that master plan reports to, and how often or when is it likely to be reviewed or updated? What's the process for that?
That would be the Regulatory Performance Committee. The master plan is a long-term plan, so we wouldn't normally look at reviewing that within the space of 10 years. In terms of updates, it's certainly a good idea to update the council or the committee, or the council via the committee, and that's something we're looking at doing with regards to item 3 there. Also, there are other matters coming up which the committee will have reports with respect to cemeteries in the near future.
I presume what happened last time is we did the bylaw, the handbook, and the master plan at the same time. Obviously we've just done the bylaw because the bylaw has to be reviewed every 5 years. So it does seem a bit of a gap. But could we specify in the resolution then that the committee that it will go to, and when a report will come? And I guess what I was really interested in was, as someone who was involved with the original Cemeteries Master Plan, and I think Councillor Kewen was as well, and staff did a huge amount of really good work on that, and a lot of detail, is that we're able to get that report in time to inform our draft annual plan, because a number of those things can't happen if there's no funding, and it would be really good to have some sense of where the priorities are that staff are seeing and the hearings panel, and then how we align our budget to that so that we don't get into this frustration that's been expressed today.
So is that request that staff report back to council, that's not item 3, back to council, back and change that to the Regulatory Performance Committee?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of don't know if that's the right committee, but...
Well, we've just heard from staff.
Yeah.
You asked the question, asked and answered, so if anyone's got a better idea...
No, it's cool. I mean, yeah, I think the key thing is that a committee looks at it, it comes back to council with some recommendations.
It's not regulatory, isn't it regulatory performance?
Yeah.
The and.
Because interesting enough, at the Heritage hearing the other day, yesterday, we heard also concerns around cemeteries. So there's kind of a number of different things happening around cemeteries. So getting that report back, I think, would be really good.
Yep. Vicky.
Aaron asked some of mine, but just in relation to the green burial area that you're looking at putting in Yaldhurst, how many spaces are you looking at creating?
Thanks. 140.
Thank you very much.
Andrew?
Thank you. And when will Yaldhurst be available for green burials?
The last conversation I had with the project manager was the earliest would be March 2019.
March 2019. And I just wanted to clarify the answer to my previous question, because what I'm reading in the report and what I heard as the answer seem to be two different things. So paragraph 3 in the report requests staff report back to council, or to the committee as it now is, regarding cemeteries capacity issues in the near future in the wider Christchurch area, including the possibility of development of the top area of Diamond Harbour Memorial Gardens Cemetery. But what I think I heard in response to my question is that the capacity reporting on Diamond Harbour, particularly around the green burials area, wouldn't be taking place until the green burials area had a proven capacity issue, which seems to conflict with what's in the report.
Well, I think there is already a proven capacity issue for it, but I was suggesting that we monitor the take-up so that, because it's very hard to predict the take-up, given interest in Diamond Harbour by people from outside the area as well. But I would suggest that staff report back to the council via whichever committee under point 3 as soon as possible. So possibly as soon as February.
As soon as February, and will that report include reporting on capacity issues of green burials in Diamond Harbour?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. So is that all the questions? Sorry, have we got? Did we get a mover and seconder? Sorry, can we flick that up? So long ago, I can't remember. Oh, sorry, you haven't. Sorry, I thought you said we had. Okay, Mike will move it, and seconded by Tim. I'll put that motion. All those.
I intended moving a. Yeah, I intended, in the event that this isn't carried, to move a further motion referring the Diamond Harbour matter and the green burials issue back to the committee for further consideration.
You're foreshadowing a motion.
So I'm foreshadowing a further motion in the event that this is lost, and I've provided some wording on it already. I mean, it may or may not be supported, but it does allow a different pathway forward if people share the same view that I do about the green burials issue.
So, okay, but so I'm going. It's not an amendment to the motion.
It's realising that if this is lost, this is the motion that I.
This is still left hanging, is what you're saying. It's still left hanging if the motion's lost.
If the motion that's been moved and seconded already passes, then we never get to considering this. But people know that I'm going to move this in the event that the original motion is lost. Right. So I'm indicating that I'll vote against the motion as put, with the intention of moving this if it's lost.
Okay.
Can I ask for clarity? Is part of the original motion that relates to this that you would want to put separately then, or you're going to vote against the whole?
Well, we can't only send a part of it back to the committee for reconsideration.
That's right. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll open it up for discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no.
No.
Do you want to put up your hands for no? Andrew, Pauline, Phil and Glenn. That's carried. Right, the next one is the hearings panel report to the council on brothels, location and commercial sexual services signage bylaw. Mike Davidson, Chair.
Yeah, I'll take this report as read. Been a couple of minor amendments through the hearings process. to the proposed bylaw. I think it's worth saying that this consultation attracted 9 submissions. I think when this first came out in 2004, it attracted 1,500. So I guess it's a sign that that it is actually working well.
So you'd like to move it, and David would like to second it. Is there any discussion? Yanni?
Or just a question around the the multi-unit clauses, and just noting there's quite a lot of concern from NZPC around that, and I was just wondering, I'm not just quite clear if that's controlled through the district plan in terms of business, small business activity, then why we would need something in the bylaw that prohibits it. So the question really is, could that not just be addressed through the adverse environmental effects through the district plan rather than through the bylaw? Why do you need the bylaw to regulate that?
The district plan covers home occupation activities, which applies to every residential property, but it doesn't have any particular different thresholds for multi-unit residential complexes, which are apartments, townhouses and units, and there's potential for problems to arise in those multi-ownership situations where this type of business is operating from those types of properties.
Just to understand that though, couldn't you make the case that anyone operating a business in a multi-unit residential area would have a far greater impact if it was, more vehicles coming in because it was an accountant or something, or whoever else? Why do you need to single out the profession?
In this sense, because it is recognised in law as having particular different thresholds. So the Prostitution Reform Act, if a business of prostitution requires a resource consent, there is a special assessment that has to happen for any business of prostitution. So there is some recognition already through that law that it does have a high threshold or different considerations that need to be placed upon a business of prostitution.
So just so I'm clear, so basically in terms of home occupation for sex work, someone cannot do that in a multi-unit residential area even if it's just where they live and they're working from home, if we have this in the bylaw.
It's been in the bylaw for 5 years, so we're not proposing any changes to it, and there's a difference between any residential property versus this particular subset, which is the multi-unit residential complex. So that's just apartments, units and townhouses, so bits of land where there is shared ownership and common use areas and other mixes that might imply a greater potential for problems.
Right. And did you consider any sort of, or did the hearing panel consider sort of, the typology of what's happening in our city, where we are getting much more multi-unit residential being built, what the harm would be if they weren't able to work or operate from there?
What we looked at is that we have this requirement in the bylaw at the moment. We've had it for 5 years, and the view of the enforcement team is that it has been working relatively well. Most of the complaints that we have had in this area have related to the small owner-operated brothels, and a number of those have related to multi-unit residential complexes.
All right, okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. Thank you. Delegations under new bylaws. These are a natural flow on from the papers
yes,
considered.
They're just a flow on, and it really just covers signage under alcohol restrictions, just leaving that to the Chief Executive, and also basically the permitting under the public places bylaw.
Right. Well, I'm happy to move that. Do I have a seconder? Glenn? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Vivian. Right. Chairperson's report on the progress of the Taylor's Mistake Batches Working Party, and Sarah.
Kia ora koutou. You'll have read this. There's quite a lot of information there. It's got the staff report to the working party. This is an update. So we've been working on this since June last year. We've reported back a couple of times, had a couple of small resolutions changing both the terms of reference slightly and the membership of the working party. This basically lets you know that we're going out for consultation tomorrow and asks for your endorsement of us going out for consultation on this. We do, while you've asked the working party to come back with recommendations, we're also aware that we don't want to be coming back to you after a year and a half of work with recommendations that are completely unpalatable. And so letting you know what the consultation is at this stage, we thought would be really, really helpful. We'd also like the panel to be convened as, the working party to be convened as a hearings panel for the purposes of this, to formalise it more so that the recommendations that come back have gone through a full hearings process, being aware of the sensitivity and the controversy that has surrounded this issue in the past, trying to keep the process really clean. So, yeah.
Yep, that's good. So you'd like to move that?
Yep.
And David would like to second it. So, Pauline?
Clarification, what's going out for consultation, is that number 5, recommended option for consultation? Is that what's been decided to go out?
So the consultation document was put in the hub, I think, last night or this morning. And so what's going out is a proposal for managed retention of most of the batches for their heritage value. So we've had...
so is it different than what's in 5 here in the report? That's what I'm asking. Sorry, I haven't seen it on the hub.
It's 5.1. Yeah, it's just gone. It went on last night. Sorry.
So all of 5.1 is actually the consultation document. I just wanted to know.
No, it's the preferred option is 5.1 in the staff report.
We need to let everyone know of all the options, and we have a preferred option, which is the managed retention. We had a really good discussion phase. You hopefully will have seen the booklet that went out, and we had some drop-in sessions. We had over 200 people give feedback. And this time, unlike other times when this issue's been raised, there was overwhelming support for managed retention. However, since the last time that this issue was dealt with, there has been an earthquake and a new district plan, both of which have caused issues with the previous mediated solution, which was never finalised. And the key things there actually being the rockfall hazard, which has changed the landscape significantly for some of those batches, and some of them are now in a place where the geotech advice is that they provide a moderate or high risk to life, even for holiday accommodation, sort of short-term stay. And so at this stage, the proposal is to offer licences to those batches of heritage value which don't have that risk. And I am sure that we will get a lot of feedback from people on that, and the panel will take that into account. So.
Good. Right, any further questions? Any discussion?
I just wanted to say I recognise the amount of work that you've put in there, Councillor Templeton or Sarah. It's been great, but I won't vote for this because I just don't think that we should be doing this at this point in time.
Consulting.
Yep. Sarah.
Yeah. So if you'll recall, the council decision on in June last year was based on a staff report that came to us saying, hey, listen, this issue needs sorting. And all councillors at that stage said, actually, yes, it does need sorting. Going out for consultation is a legal requirement of sorting it. And so we're just working through the process that we all decided to do. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just
yep. That's what debate's for, so that's fine. We don't all have to agree. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Councillor Swiggs opposed. Did you put Councillor Swiggs? Yeah, cool. Right, the next item on the agenda is the QE2 Recreation and Sports Centre Ministry of Education Associated Transport Network Improvements request for further information. Lynette, welcome back.
Thanks.
Right, now, this was a request direct from council?
Yes.
Okay.
So there was a request for additional information on the consultation that was undertaken through the process, and we got a bit confused on the day, so we've outlined it in this report. It's detailed through the report. There's been a significant amount of communication with the community. The board were comfortable around the RMA processes that were going on, and we went out for probably a more limited but informed type consultation on the specific details of the changes that were as a result of the agreements through the RMA process. The request has come to council to resolve the legality of the cycle lanes and the shared paths. The rest has been unanimously, and the report has been unanimously supported by the community board.
Great. Okay, Pauline.
So that was my question. So it didn't come through the ITI committee because that was a direct direction from council, was it, to go outside the ITI committee?
Yes, it went through the community board and to council.
The community board had the original delegation.
Had the delegation, but they don't have the delegation to resolve shared paths and cycle lanes.
But they've unanimously approved this.
Yeah, so if they'd had the delegation, we wouldn't even been considering this at the moment.
Thank you.
Okay. And is it something we can legally delegate to the community board? No. I'm just trying to check, you know, I'm still gathering my list, or I hope the Chief Executive's gathering the list of things that we can't, because there are some things that I think in the conversation that central government's indicating it wants to have around, you know, sort of localism, that really ought to be able to be delegated away from the council, even further down down across to the community boards where the community decisions are most relevant. All right. Well, look, I've got David, I've got Mike, I've got Tim and Yanni.
Just on point 1. I'm sort of a little confused at the moment. We talk about approval for the establishment. That's already in place, that cycle piece from Frost Road through to the...
Yeah, it's effectively the resolution of the legality of the shared path and the cycle lanes that are on the... They have been built, yes.
Okay, there is
it's the formalisation of it all.
An issue where the cycle lane splits, it stays off the road most of the way, and then there's a portion of it that drops onto the road where traffic merge between the cycleway, and there's a centre island there, which I always
I know the point you're at.
It's a strange configuration to have, where you're dropping bikes back onto the road in a narrow part where it's I don't know why they just don't stay on the shared pathway and carry on through there. It seems to be a bit of a safety issue that needs to be addressed. And
I don't believe the post-construction safety audit's been completed, so that will be done, and we'll highlight it as a point to consider for the auditor.
Yeah, well, there might
which
be
may
a
result
work
in some
needed
tweaking.
around just that particular area there.
Yep. Thank you
and
for
a
raising
little bit off the subject, I suppose, really, the section of the road from that point back to the roundabout just breaks up every other week. And
I'll raise that with the maintenance team.
We're just forever filling potholes.
Yep. Mike?
Thank you. This is really good, but obviously the school's come in, and I'm a bit concerned with the actual roundabout and the safety of the kids actually cycling to school. Is there anything happening with that, or is that just going to be...
That's an NZTA roundabout, isn't it? Is it?
I'm pretty sure it is.
It is,
because,
yes. It's an NZTA road, and I do believe we're having conversations with
NZ. There's 2 roads that aren't NZTA and 2 roads that are. So
yes.
NZ Drive
So
is
the conversations
NZTA.
are happening with NZTA, and I believe there is a conversation about that very point. I'm not sure what is being addressed at the point, but
thank you.
we are aware of it.
Yeah, Travis Road east of the roundabout is not NZTA.
That's right.
And Frost Road going back the other way is not NZTA
No.
either.
But the roundabout
Anzac
is.
Drive and Travis Road back westward are.
Yes.
And
the arms of the roundabout are NZTA responsibility as well.
But, so would they be that they are going to address the safety issues there?
I believe there is a proposal with NZTA, but I can't be absolutely certain about it today. But I do know that the conversations are being had about getting people across that roundabout.
Yeah.
Children and
that would
yeah,
be
I
quite
can come
good.
back on that one.
That would be great. Thank you. And I'm sure the community board would want a copy of that as well.
Yes, we'll make sure that.
Tim.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, over and above the original plan, if there was one, what are the cost implications over and above anything planned? Because this is part of the whole QE2 site, isn't it? So is there any extra funding because of this, and where would it be coming from?
No.
So this is all budgeted for?
This is all budgeted for, and there's been cost share agreements agreed between the different parties as well.
Cool, thank you. No surprise.
Yeah, no.
Yanni.
I was just, I see some of the submissions raised concern about the narrowness of the shared path, and we've since, I mean, this has been done, we've got the electric scooters and e-bikes gaining, I think, what is huge popularity. So, I mean, I'm really interested in the safety for the buses, the cyclists, the pedestrians, and so I'm just kind of wanting, I guess, some reassurance that we're thinking about new modes of transport and future-proofing rather than retrospectively addressing.
We're doing as much as we can all the time to do that.
So how have we done it with this one?
I can't answer that today, I'm sorry.
So
this was a long process. Well, part of this, so this was a long process with both the Ministry of Education and the Recreation and Sport Unit to agree the changes to the road network, and part of that was to extend the shared path up and around the corner to Frost Road, but retain some of the on-road cycle lanes that Councillor East discussed before. Now, I don't know what was taken, I can't tell you what was taken into account around e-scooters. Electric bikes have been around for a lot longer, but it has been worked through over a number of months with all of those parties to try and address all of the requirements of buses, cyclists, pedestrians and the travelling public on the roadway.
Right. So in terms of the pathway, it's already been built, so widening it's not an option.
Well, it's an option in the future if the need is there.
Right.
But we believe it's been assessed at an appropriate level.
Okay. And someone coming to the sports thing on a cycle, like to the Rec and Sports along Travis Road, they have to cross over and then basically go, there's sufficient access through there?
Pedestrian island will make a difference there. You mean if they're coming west on Travis as opposed to east? Because if they're coming from the west, they'll have a pedestrian, they'll have a
west,
you know,
yeah. So
they'll have a pedestrian island.
It's just a little bit hard to see from the plan. Like someone comes along, I know with the coastal pathway, for example, we were given a lot of advice around the safety of cars coming and turning in with a cycleway, so we pushed it quite back from the main road as far as we could. So it sort of went like that, so that there was a better, safer crossing point. So just where vehicles turn into the Rec and Sport,
yes,
and the school,
yeah,
just I guess just a concern around the cyclist safety.
Having space. I believe that the setback zones meet the best practice design guidance, so there won't be parking near it, so you can see it. It's my understanding.
Okay, and what do we like?
It will have been, so the scheme and all of the schemes have been safety audited at design, pre-tender stage, and they will be safety audited at post-construction.
Okay.
I don't believe that's happened.
Can we get those circulated to us, the safety pre and post? I think that would be quite useful.
It hasn't been done yet, so
No,
I can't
when it
circulate
is
it until
done.
it's done.
Yeah.
But I can raise it as a concern with the safety auditor.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Great, thanks.
Very good. I think that was all. So, sorry, did we get a mover and a seconder for this? Not yet. Okay. Glenn, you would like to move it? Anyone else? Pauline? Oh, well, David was a bit slow, but sorry. Right, okay. David seconded it. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Lynette. Metropolitan Discretionary Response Fund.
Happy to move.
This would normally... Sorry?
Happy to move it.
You're happy to move it? Seconded by Pauline. Any discussion? Put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. Next item, water supply improvement below ground wellheads. Helen. Oh, did I have that in the wrong order? Oh no.
No.
Oh.
31.
Oh, yep. Right, thank you for your latest report. Would you like to just speak to it?
Certainly. So this report is to consider the upgrade of the below ground wellheads on a temporary basis to speed up the removal of chlorine from our network. Now, you may have seen media reports where this has variously been described as a quick fix or a band-aid, but I want to be very clear that these works will enable the wells to be signed off as secure against the current drinking water standards, and protecting public health and the delivery of our water supply remains our primary concern. So, and the other thing I just want to draw your attention to, and those of you who are good with numbers will have picked it up and have a question ready for me, but the costings you will see are there for up to 42 wells, but the list of wells to be repaired is less than that, and it is actually 33. There's a slight error in the numbers, and that is because we're still considering the best approach to take for each of these wells and programming the full remediation upgrade works. So some of the wells we would propose to fully remediate, and the remainder of them will be for the temporary repairs. And the reason that I can't absolutely guarantee how many of those 42, although we propose it'll be 33 of them upgraded in this way, is that we are still assessing the tenders and programming the work out through the summer and then the following winter period. So I'm happy to take questions.
Yep. Pauline, Mike, Yanni.
Quick question on when you say temporary, how long do you expect that work to last, the repair to hold up?
So generally when we have a well signed off as secure, we're required to inspect it again after 5 years. For these works in the below ground wells, we will be required to have another look after 2 years. So it may be that we inspect them after the 2 year period and get them signed off again for another 2 year period, or it may be by then that the drinking water standards would require us to raise them above ground anyway.
Okay, but my point is, I'm trying to ascertain, is that the work, would it be, in your view, the work that we're doing now could last for many years? It's not like it's only going to last for 2 years. We're only getting our sign-off in 2 yearly sections.
That's correct.
Below ground. But it doesn't mean that the repair work is only going to be good for 2 years.
That's correct.
The actual physical work could last for many years. It's not. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. Sorry, I've got. Where have I written your names? Mike.
Thank you. So obviously the deadline is for us to remove chlorines May next year. But there's two packages, with the second package being delivered by October next year. So obviously the two don't line up. Is this indicating what, that we're not going to get the water supply unchlorinated by May, or?
No, so May fortunately is in winter, and we only require about half of our wells and pump stations to be operating to deliver water to the city through the winter. The peak demand in winter is half or much less than half of the peak demand in summer. So the first tranche is to enable us to deliver that winter supply by May, and the second tranche will do the works through the winter to assist us in the following summer.
Thanks, that's great to know. The two attachments of the graphs which shows the progress, is it possible to have graphs that actually have the prediction of what's going to happen moving forward?
Yes, it's possible, but that prediction changes every week as we change the programming. So we are working on a proposed prediction, and that changes as we put the tenders out and we get the proposed programs from the contractors, and then let the contract. So we can certainly put a proposed program out. Yes.
Good. I've got Yanni, David and Jimmy.
Thank you for the information. I just wanted to check the Aquifer 1. So I think I'm right in the report where basically the package 1 that we've got and package 2, these are ones that aren't in Aquifer 1. They're the deeper aquifers. So is that correct?
I think
Just
that is correct for all of these ones, yes.
Right. So in terms of the Aquifer 1, are you able to give us any sort of update about where we've got to with that testing and when we're likely to get additional information back?
So the Aquifer 1, are you talking about the testing against criteria 1 to determine the age of the water?
I think
and
that's
then the
what
modelling?
it was, the ones around the base of the Port Hills mainly, Tanner, yeah.
So
it's
that
not
work
Aquifer
is
1.
still progressing and is not due to be delivered until June next year.
Right. So I'm just trying to get my head around geographically. We're doing the UV treatment at the main one south. I forget what the exact name is.
At main pumps, yes.
Yeah.
Main pump. We've got a few others that are around the base of the Port Hills that are going into the shallower.
That's correct, yes. Spraydon,
aquifer.
Palatine, Thorrington, those pump stations.
So the kind of idea of dealing with those ones to get secure status, we really can't do anything until we get that testing back. Is that basically the deal? Which will be next year.
We have some preliminary testing on the age of some of those wells, and I can give you the details of that if you like. I haven't got those with me today.
No, that's okay. I think the key thing is we're not spending money now that's going to be obsolete, which I think was the point that Pauline was asking. So in 12 months' time, the money we've spent...
None of these are Aquifer 1.
Right, yeah. And just the final question was in regards to the work that we're doing, and obviously we're just seeing an announcement from government a few days ago. So can you just give us a bit of a kind of context of, any update on what's actually going on there and how this relates to it?
I can.
Just at a high level.
Okay, so the government announcements, there's nothing brand new in those announcements. It's along the same lines that we've been hearing from the Minister for Local Government and the Minister of Health over the last 6 months. So Minister Mahuta has repeated that the status quo for the delivery of 3 water services is not sustainable over the long term, and she's talking there both about financial sustainability, particularly for smaller communities, and also environmental sustainability in terms of the impact of both stormwater and wastewater on the environment. So in terms of that, the options that are on the table are much the same. The first one is better regulation of both drinking water and wastewater, and that includes economic regulation, so how things are funded and financed and being quite transparent to those who are paying for these services so that they understand they're paying enough to invest in the infrastructure but not paying over and above the odds in terms of the quality of that service. She's also talking about aggregation of suppliers, so those who deliver both water supply and wastewater, perhaps not all the way to stormwater, because stormwater is integrally linked to roads and parks, so may stay at a smaller, more local scale. But certainly for water supply and wastewater, she's talking aggregation. And once again, the regional model, or the sort of mega regional model of just 4 or 5 agencies across the country, has been proposed. She's made a much stronger statement about what she expects out of aggregation, in that she has pulled out Watercare in Auckland as one of the exemplars, and that is because Watercare owns the assets and can invest across old council boundaries. So just as Christchurch has invested in small communities on Banks Peninsula, an aggregated service delivery agency would be expected to invest where the need is greatest. And then the final thing that she's been talking about is, well, there's another cabinet paper actually that's talking about it, is a need to look at funding and financing mechanisms for local government across the board, and signalling that one of the options on the table is some central government finance to come into the delivery of water and wastewater services, and possibly stormwater. So it's much the same, but sort of crystallising the aggregation angle and adding in that there may be some central government finance coming. And so I can give you a summary if you like.
Yeah, LGNZ's also reiterated its very strong position that there is no one size fits all for New Zealand, and you know, highlighting the significance of the difference between the different parts of New Zealand. That's right. So the makeup of local authorities here is quite different, for example, than the aggregation of the local authorities in Auckland, or even that partnership for Wellington Water. It's quite a different situation. I was just trying to
understand, if we make the decision today, we're not going to get a decision in a few months' time from government that undoes all the money that we've spent.
So the new regulatory framework for water is not expected until the middle of 2019.
So we don't know whether there's mandatory chlorination or anything. The words mandatory residual disinfection do not appear in the cabinet paper, which is a good thing. But the other words that you would want to appear don't appear there either. They do talk about a risk-based performance.
They do talk about a risk-based approach,
which is actually a positive step forward, because they have talked about mandatory residual disinfection in every other communication prior. So, I mean, it does signal a bit of a shift, but look, there is always going to be an element of you know, risk that central government will act in a particular way, which will require us to act in a particular way. I just want us to keep going with this, because I think it is worth it. If we can get the drinking water assessor to sign off on this approach, there is a risk ultimately that that not all of that money can be recovered in terms of the way forward, but a significant amount of it can be. So I just think that we have to weigh up the benefits of you know, proceeding to prove that we are in a position to deliver unchlorinated water to our communities. There will be changes. I mean, this is not a set of decisions that's going to be made quickly. So, right, I've got David and Jimmy.
My question was answered with Mike's.
Jimmy.
Okay. My question is, I'm not sure what's the rationale you change from the kind of option 2 to option 1, because I remember a couple of months ago you particularly emphasized this one is kind of upgrade and remedial to the best practice, like at the end of Columbus Street, you particularly mentioned to upgrade with the UV instrument. So I just want to know, that kind of UV instrument is under the option 1 or option 2?
So the ultraviolet disinfection is still going to go ahead at main pumps. So we've already confirmed that, and that's out for tender at the moment, and will be delivered somewhere between May and June next year, according to the program at the moment.
Still go ahead.
Yes. So
it will still go ahead.
None of these wells are at main pumps, so none of these are affected by the ultraviolet option.
Okay, but in here, if a disadvantage is additional capital expenditure up to 2 million. there's a top up, because those one is 23 million, right?
So the
upgrade those
yeah.
wellheads.
So the,
this top up another 20.
The 2 million comes out of the budget that has been approved through the long-term plan?
Yes.
It's not, we're not asking for an additional 2 million for this.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'd like to move the recommendation, seconded by Pauline. Is there any discussion? Pauline?
I'd just like to endorse everything you just said. Let's keep going with this. I think we're going to get there. We're doing a good job. And I feel quite positive about the reports that have just come out. I think there's quite a few windows there that enable us to set ourselves up with respect as being a really responsible drinking water provider. So I'm happy to support today.
Okay. Yeah, I'm very happy to support this work. I think it's very sensible. We've set a deadline of May the 10th, and I think the fact that you're doing everything you can to get there is fantastic. So I like the report, and I like the fact that things are happening on it and we can actually see real progress towards it. In terms of what it means going forward, I didn't feel nearly so optimistic about the Minister's statements, I have to say, because she went through 3 issues. One was the degree of regulation. Well, that's been the Ministry of Health, a government issue, and actually the government should sort it. The second was the possibility of putting some money in to help smaller local authorities who literally don't have the money to do the work, so that everybody in New Zealand could drink safe drinking water. Very sensible. The third one, which concerned me, was the proposed aggregation of authorities. And you will have seen on the piece of paper the cost of water and wastewater in Canterbury, and then the cost on the West Coast. And then the proposed aggregation of much of the South Island. Oh, guess who bears that cost? Yeah, good news, guys. So not something I'm willing to tolerate. The other thing that I didn't deal with was the concept that the 3 waters were somehow not an integral part of every city, of every local government, and that everything you did in local government was integrated, and the purpose of the 1989 reforms was actually to bring all of the functions of local government together such that cities could actually control their own destiny. And then for a government to suggest, whoops, we're going to take what in our case is 34% of what we spend our money on, 34% of our budget, take it out. So when you dig up Riccarton Road to do the pipes and the roads and the bus stops and plant trees and all those things, they're not integrated, is bizarre. And still remains bizarre, and nothing in the paper persuaded me that it wasn't bizarre. But, well, one of the risks, Raf, of this is that we do all of our work and get our water absolutely safe and fantastic, and then all of our waters are taken off us. So I'm sure you will have caught up with that risk. And so the key thing from our point of view, I think, is to get our drinking water to the point where it is absolutely safe, where it has the Drinking Water Authority's approval, and where we know that we're good. That's the first key step. Fighting the second one will be the second key step. Yep. Glenn.
Thank you. I don't quite share the same position. I'm actually quietly confident over the future over this. I think the signs are looking good. I take what you have said, Helen, as being quite significant, that mandatory residual disinfection was not in the cabinet paper. That fills me with, good hope. We could always say that we are already aggregated, and that we did aggregate some time ago when we amalgamated various councils here. On a smaller scale than Auckland, but we're already in that position. Good to see in the actual report too the acknowledgement of another layer, that being the high pressure aquifers, which serves as another barrier. Now I'm not sure about the other councils what they have, but our artesian fed aquifers surely must be amongst, having the highest pressure in the country. I know in the east we've been going through a pressure equalisation program or trial, given the high pressure there. So I'm actually quite hopeful for the way ahead, but I agree with the Mayor, let's just keep pushing forward. We could end up leading the way. I think this is good. I see examples all around us. The Hills Road pump station, the fences are down, the work's proceeding. It's good.
Aaron?
I just want to quickly touch on just one aspect, and that's the use of the S word, safe. Our water's already safe, we're just making it even safer and more reliable, and I think the public should never be concerned that it's not safe, because we'd all, us or Alistair would do a boil water notice, and so our water is safe. It's just going to be even safer, I think, as part of the clear messaging, and we need to be a bit stronger on the conservation of water. I got a lot of messages last night when the story went up on stuff. I didn't know we're meant to be saving water, is what they were saying. So yeah, I think maybe some pictures of some councillors having some really stingy showers or something like that might get the message across.
Mine's under 3 minutes, don't worry. Andrew?
Yeah, thanks.
No pictures, no pictures.
Another excellent report. The key points in the report, I think, show the huge amount of work that has been done, and certainly give me continued confidence that we are working towards getting the chlorine out of the water within the indicated time frame by May next year. And I'm pleased to have more recommendations in front of us today that allow us to make further progress in that regard. So thanks for all the work that you're doing and the team are doing and you're continuing to do to make sure that we can continue to have that degree of confidence. In terms of best practice, clearly this is work which is leading us towards being able to get chlorine out of the water sooner rather than later. It's also work that, while temporary, feeds into what a realistic response to any new regulations might be. And without preempting that, I mean, my view certainly is that for government to look at this and to regulate and possibly regulate differently is appropriate, but it should be the view of each territorial authority how it responds to those regulations. And I particularly pick up on your comments around aggregation. And, we're spending around 80 million on current budgets in Banks Peninsula on wastewater alone. I think that serves as a huge example of what can happen when one authority invests well in infrastructure and another, possibly for good reason, small population in this case, isn't able to, what would happen in an aggregated model. So, whilst on the peninsula we're thankful for the 80 million, it does serve as a very good example of what can happen when we need to start looking across boundaries.
Right. Jimmy?
If we compare the timing and the cost, probably the remit to best practice is a good option. But we consider the timing, probably I go with the option 1, especially the residents constituent. Probably not only in my area, citywide. I made them, they always when the chlorination water will be east, when will be the east. Our commitment is 1 year since the October, but since the May of this year, so up to the May of next year. So compare these two options, it looks like this option 1 is more faster, and that can aid for us to fulfill our commitment. But if we go to the option 2, not sure whether after the May of the next year, still, the coordinate all the water. So in this situation, I go the option.
Anne?
I just wanted to reiterate the comments about the fantastic work that you've done, Helen, and the team. And we talk about safe. We've got a fantastic safe pair of hands in you, and really appreciate everything you've done, particularly in able to adjust the approaches as you deem fit. That flexibility is really commendable, and I think must be nationwide. You must be leading the way in terms of dealing with these issues, you and your team. So we really appreciate what you've done. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Well, look, I'm just going to close this off with having moved the motion, just to say how important the water supply improvement program has been to the council. It's an excellent program. It has a helicopter view right across the whole of the work and is very focused not just on the present but on the future as well. And I think that is the key. It's not just about making sure that the water is safe and chlorine free. It's keeping it chlorine free regardless of what regulatory intervention central government makes, because we can provide the reassurance with the support of our drinking water supplier, drinking water assessor and the medical officer of health, who have actually been excellent to work with, are challenging everything, all the decisions that we're making along the way to make sure that we're making the right decisions. But I just feel like everything now is joined up and really focused on achieving the outcome, but then keeping it there, which is absolutely key. Just two other things I want to mention. One is the conservation plea, yet again, to the people of Christchurch. Please reduce your water use over the summer. It is a natural time that you want to water your gardens. Wait till after 9 o'clock at night and only hand hold a hose. No sprinkler systems, please. And yes, have a short shower. Instead of a lengthy, leisurely bath, which I'm tragically going to have to give up for the summer. But, these are the things that we can all do together just to make sure that we're not using any more water than we need to. And I know that I usually go up to the Coromandel where it has a toilet system where essentially if it's yellow, let it mellow, if it's brown, flush it down. Everything can be used to really focus on saving the water. And so it's in people's own hands that they can help us get the work done over the summer period. And the last one is congratulations on the myth-busting pages that are going up online. Could councillors please post them on your social media? We do need to bust the myths, and I've saw Vicky put it on her Facebook page and got heaps of comments helping people understand that, I know you didn't attribute it to the team at the council, but no. But the point is that it really helps people understand what are myths and why we're having to do this. It's just to get the pressure off the infrastructure while we repair the infrastructure. So on that note, just asking people, save water. And I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much. Now, we'll move on to the resolution to exclude the public because we'll have the afternoon session after lunch. And I know that there was an item that people wanted to deal with separately. So I am going to get our legal person to speak as to why, and is the easiest way that we just deal with that as a separate vote? Yep. Okay, so which is the, oh yes, it's the 5 to 6. Okay, so that's So shall I do that one first?
You do it first.
Yeah, do that one first. Okay, so the overall resolution. So I'll move the overall resolution, and the question is that what is it? What is the item? Sorry, item number
48.
48 be dealt with, and item 48 will be dealt with separately, which is adopting pages 5 to 6 of the supplementary agenda, right? Okay. So do I have a seconder for the resolution? Andrew. And And what's the easiest way to do this? Is it? Yeah.
I think it'd be useful to perhaps hear from Ian as to clarify the explanation. It seems pretty clear to me, but.
Well, I'll hand over to Mike because he's the one that wanted to raise it.
Yeah, I can quickly speak and then hear from Ian. I just can't vote for item 48, which is the Central City reduced fee parking, and I won't go into too much detail, but previously all the reports to council around this have been in the public domain, and in my opinion, which is probably going to differ to Ian's, the redacting of some sensitive information in this report, I think, would actually allow it to remain in the public domain, so I'll be voting against it.
Okay. Yanni.
Thank you. I'll also be voting against the full report being put in public excluded. I think if there are sensitive things, then it would be more than appropriate that we do go into PX to have the sensitive things discussed. But the majority, I can't see why it needs to be put in PX, and so I won't be supporting it either.
Okay, and Pauline?
I think the whole rationale, which runs right through the whole report, is sensitive information, so I'll be voting to retain it in PX.
And Ian, would you like to just give a quick...
Okay, just in respect of item 48, depending on the decisions that you're going to make, the council will be entering into commercial agreements with other parties, and these have yet to be negotiated. Some of the advice, a good part of the advice to be provided to you is legally privileged, and it has been provided to staff on an undertaking a condition of confidentiality. Making that information available now would likely prejudice and disadvantage the council in terms of its commercial activities and the negotiations that are yet to come. And I would strongly urge you to vote to keep that information PX. In terms of redaction, a lot of this advice is throughout the report. It would be difficult to do that before you decided the issue. There may be opportunities subsequently for a public release or release of some of that information, but certainly at this point the matter should be dealt with in confidence.
Right. Dion and Sarah.
Yeah, I'll be supporting to keep it in PX. I hate keeping things in PX if we don't have to, but this one we are trying to do something good for the Central City, and I don't want to ruin that opportunity.
Yeah, but it's I have to accept that this is a debate, and so I mean whispering in my ear doesn't really help. Sarah.
Every year in our annual and long-term plans, we pass resolutions which then lead us into negotiations for contracts for various things that we have decided to do as a council. So we, make a decision to put some specified amount of money on budget, and that then leads to a tendering process or to commercial arrangements with people to provide services or to provide project management or any of those things. And I can't see that the content of this is any different, and so I'll be voting against it going to PX.
Jimmy and then Andrew.
Okay. But may I ask you questions?
No, we're debating.
Debate, yeah. Because I'm concerned,
but you're really clear that we can't talk about the content of the paper.
Yeah. Okay, I go with the legal advice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ian, for that advice. I mean, I originally approached this from the point of view that I would like to bring it out of public excluded and debate it in the public arena, but really that's overridden by the need for good debate based on full information. Having debate which is stifled because it's in public, when there are matters that are not for public debate that we probably need to be talking about, and also having a report where there are redactions of some of the information that we need to be relying on as we have that debate. That, in my view, is not good practice and doesn't lead to good decision making. So much as I would like to see you know, as much of our business as possible done in the public arena. In this case, I don't believe that it is possible, and my guidance on that certainly comes from the legal advice, but also comes from a need that we have a responsibility for good decision making, and we exercise that as well as we possibly can.
In a redacted form when we debate the actual paper and make an actual decision. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. So that's Mike, Sarah and Yanni. All right.